Hello and welcome to Six Part. Today I'm gonna start a new series. What if Deku got the Venom Symbiot? Part 1. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
In the year 2200, existence on Earth resembles something from a comic book. Most people on Earth have acquired abilities referred to as quirks. Due to their unique skills, professional superheroes have become more prevalent in an effort to stem the tide of criminal activity related to quirks. As they say, the plan was to fight fire with fire. After about 200 years, you'll discover that about 80% of people on the planet today genuinely have peculiarities. As much a part of who you are as your fingerprints and eye color are your quirks. Which makes it even more painful that I don't have a quirk. I'd always wanted to be a hero, just like my hero idol All Might. However, I was told by the doctors that I was not born with a quirk, which means I am among the quirkless. As a result, Bakugo, my first friend, ended up being one of my biggest sources of pain. I really must thank Bakugo, even though I'm not sure what made him hate me so much. I wouldn't have gained my power if it weren't for him. This is the tale of how I came to be the heir apparent to a piece of the first wave of heroes. This is the tale of how we came to be the new peace symbol. Izuku cried out to the symbol of peace, "Is it ever possible for me to become someone like you?" in an attempt to find acceptance for the emotions he had carried since he was a young child. At this, All Might turned back to face Izuku. Before he could continue, the symbol of peace locked up in agony and started to change back into his small Might form. "Without a quirk, huh?" he asked. "No, not just now, damn it," he thought in a desperation. Izuku went on, oblivious to the change taking place in front of him. "For the longest time, I thought saving people was the coolest thing you could possibly do. My classmates think I'm a weakling, that I'm not good for anything. But that just makes me want to prove them wrong. That's why. I want to be someone others can look up to, just like you." But wait, from where is this smoke coming? Izuku let out a startled UHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHHas most people would have when they saw the 7 feet 4 inches, 500 power symbol of peace abruptly transform into a skeletal man with hair horns. Somewhere its current prison, a soda bottle, was encircled by a black goo. Yes, indeed. Switching from a Dr. Pepper bottle to a glass canister. I'm obviously getting better in life. The ooze pondered cynically. If only so that Peter will never know about this. I find comfort in the fact that he has been dead for 135 years. The ooze then sighed and considered the previous events. I'd never hear the end of it. Oh no, that blonde. He broke up the child's bonding session. I felt that he had something. The chance to become a real hero, just like Peter was. All I could deduce from the child's mind was that his name was Izuku Midoriya and that Bakugo is the person that scares him the most. I have to locate him once more. However, how? The ooze ruminated in his polymer cage. Izuku and All Might are back with, "I'm sorry, kid. But without a quirk, it's impossible." Izuku did not want to hear these words, especially not from his hero. He began to hyperventilate as he felt his entire world collide around him. All Might tried to soften the blow of his words by saying, "I know it's not what you wanted to hear, kid. It's okay to dream, as long as those dreams are realistic." Izuku gave a numb nod and turned to head for the stairs, descending to the ground floor with a dejected gait. With Venom all right, really now. All of Peter's abilities are mine. But my fucking kryptonite is a plastic container. What comes next? A bottle of sentient Mountain Dew that murders my one and only true love? The sarcastic and bitter thoughts of the symbiote irritated him more and more with each passing minute. "Hold on, are those voices really there?" One boy addressed the others, saying, "Man Bakugo. You sure were harsh on Midoriya. Didn't you guys used to be friends when you were younger?" "Bakugo. That's the punk that scared Midoriya, he's my ticket back to the kid," Venom exclaimed, rubbing his hands merrily. "Now, all I need to do is get out of this damn bottle." Whoa. Venom's train of thought was interrupted when the punk-looking blonde kicked the bottle he was stuck in, knocking the cap off and freeing him. "That fucking Deku. Constantly trying to take me for a fool. Does he believe his quirky ass can be a hero? All he has to do is follow my advice and leap from a building. Perhaps his subsequent like will grant him a quirk," Bakugo growled, his lackeys chuckling nervously beside him so as not to provoke him. "Someone needs to teach him how the real world functions." "Blondie, why don't I show you how the real world operates?" He tried to move forward, but his foot got stuck, and he heard a voice from his feet that confused Bakugo and his friends and stopped any more conversation. He looked down to see two sclera that were completely white staring up at him. I like a skinsuit with some fire, together with Izuku. Izuku was just walking aimlessly, not really knowing where he was going to end up. After all, it would crush anyone to hear from the top dog that their dream is unattainable, and for Izuku, this was the straw that broke the camel's back. I suppose I should just head back home. Izuku thought gloomily, it's not like I have any friends to hang out with or reason to stay out. Suddenly, he bumped into someone and was startled out of his reverie. Looking up to apologize, he noticed the group of people in front of him and the stench of smoke filling the air. Is this a villain attack? Venom, it's a bit of a stretch, but this whole mess is my best chance to get this kid to come out. If he's as crazy about heroes as I think he is, he'll come running in to save his friend, no matter what powers he possesses. However, I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to wait until the heroes believe they destroyed me before I can talk to the kid. Regenerating my body is painful, but it's a necessary pain. As long as I can slip my brain onto him, I can explain to him what I want. Venom thought to himself. You know, I might have gone a little too far, but these pros are keeping everyone alive, so it's not like anyone's died yet. Still, that kid needs to show up soon. The professional bout got back underway. Izuku had inferred from the throng that a black monster villain was holding a middle school student hostage. Wait a minute, isn't this where Kachan comes to hang out after school with his friends? Izuku thought frantically as he made his way through the throng, attempting to get to the front for a better view. The atmosphere was tense, and the crowd's fear was starting to grow as the heroes struggled to stop the villain. Panicking, Izuku thought, that's the monster that All Might saved me from earlier. Whatever else Izuku was thinking, it was all thrown out the window when he heard a shout come from the villain's stomach area. That means, this is my fault. All Might must have dropped it when I grabbed onto him. Bakugo's voice was muted compared to his usual outbursts, but the explosions he attempted to set off were unquestionably at their usual levels. Let me go, you goddamn monster. Still, they didn't really affect the bad guy all that much. Before Izuku could stop himself, fear took hold of him and a yell tore at his throat. Kachan. Venom. This kid's explosions are not to be taken lightly. It's unfortunate for him that I find explosions to be more of a nuisance than a real danger. Venom mused smugly. Nevertheless, I consider it fortunate that he is attempting brute force blows as opposed to using a flashbang or napalm. Kachan. Somehow, despite the chaos that had surrounded the symbiote, a throaty shout resounded through the street. Kachan. If what I saw in you was true, I can help you just like I helped Peter. Only the kid ever called the Bakugo punk that, so that means I can make my move and stop stalling, Venom thought with barely concealed joy. I made sure the punk had enough oxygen to survive, but he was still struggling to get free, and it was only when I felt him turn to face the crowd that I heard it. Set him free. Venom and Izuku. We may not be friends anymore, Kachan, but I can't let you die, Izuku exclaimed as he ran towards the monster, determined to save his one-time friend. Set him free. The heroes and spectators were in disbelief, not knowing how to respond or comprehend that a young man was rushing toward a monster without any apparent plan. Not you, idiot. ACT now. He would prove to everyone that he was a hero, even if it meant losing his life, despite a hero yelling at him. This kid is proving to me that I made the right decision. It also appears that All Might Guy is nearby. Whatever, it's not my problem. I just need some dramatics and to focus my attention on him, Venom said, pausing for a moment before continuing. This is it, kid. With ready eyes, the creature turned to face him. Grab this. Before anyone else could know, one of the ooze blobs slithered into Izuku's pocket and onto his flesh, starting the bonding process. Izuku screamed at the creature and threw his backpack, striking it in the eye and staggering it. Izuku then frantically clawed at the creature's body, trying to free Bakugo. Kid, that was incredibly careless. Izuku was admonished by a stern-looking officer, who was obviously unhappy with his behavior. I don't know what you were thinking, but I'm sending one of my officers to give you a ride home, the officer said to Izuku before they got into the front. Izuku sighed with despair as he moved in the way he believed a hero should, acting before he had a chance to reflect. Isn't that what a hero does? Helps those in need, Izuku thought glumly. Yes, it is, Midoriya Young. Izuku bolt upright in his chair and cast a frantic glance around to find the source of the voice. Is there a problem, kid? From the corner of his eye, the officer gave him a quick glance. Izuku stumbled out an excuse to the officer. No. Guess I'm still just a little traumatized from that event. What was that? The officer asked. Izuku, I'm your partner now. I'm speaking to you, for lack of a better term, via telepathy. Everything will be explained when we get home, but know that you are safe. I'll show you. We were partnered with Spider-Man. We will go into more detail about this soon. Even though Izuku was no longer in a panic, he was still concerned about the voice inside his head that wasn't his own, even though he was aware that Spider-Man was one of the first people to use their quirk to become a hero. In the hopes that the voice would hear him, he asked himself, "Why are you speaking to me? And what should I call you?" Izuku was exhausted. He had been taunted and ridiculed by Bakugo and his friends for daring to apply to Ua once more. He had nearly died and, following that, had been told by the person he looked up to the most that he could never be a hero without a quirk. He had then rushed into a situation where Bakugo was being killed by an ooze-like monstrosity in an attempt to save his one-time friend, and after being saved and reprimanded by both the professionals and the police, he was driven home, only to find he was going crazy on top of everything else that had happened today. How ironic, huh? Izuku sadly whispered to himself, "Being a hero is all I want. However, it seems like every time I try, I'm rejected." After hearing this, the symbiote decided to wait to talk to the boy until it could get him alone. Judging by the fact that the police have just arrived at Izuku's house, the conversation was bound to happen soon. "All right, kid, this is where you live, right?" the police officer muttered as he took his keys out of the ignition. Izuku nodded at this, unbuckled his seatbelt, and stepped out of the car to take in some of the crisp night air outside his family's apartment building. Perhaps this is how my life is meant to be. The police escorted him to his apartment, knocked on his door, and waited for his mother to answer. The officer talked to his mother and told her what had happened. She was understandably distraught and sobbed uncontrollably in the hallway of their apartment, all the while holding his breath and forcing it out of him like a snake holding its prey. "I'm so happy that you're safe, Izuku." His mother Inko wept in her usual way. She was a very sensitive person who often worried herself sick about his life. Since she was raising him alone, she tried her hardest to show him so much love that he would never miss his father's absence. She was a good-hearted person, and Izuku liked to think she did a good job raising him. "Mom, I'm good. Remain calm. Right now, I just need to take a shower." Izuku bitterly thought, emotionally hurt though, that is a whole other issue. He said softly, knowing that his mother would worry no matter what he did, but at least he could show her that he wasn't hurt physically. Observing his apartment through Izuku's eyes, the symbiote took in the surroundings, noticing how much it resembled Peter's place from their time living with his aunt. It seemed that Izuku was in a similar situation, if a little wealthier than his first partner. It saw Izuku enter his shower and decided that now would be a good time to discuss its proposition with him. "We would like to discuss our offer to make you a hero with you further, young Midoriya." At the sound of the voice in his head, Izuku leapt, nearly falling and breaking out in the shower. "Who made that remark?" When he realized there was nobody else in the restroom with him, Izuku yelled in alarm. "Don't panic, young Midoriya. You don't have to yell. We can hear what you're thinking." "What are you? Why are you in my head?" Izuku furiously thought to herself. "We are the last of our kind, a species known as symbiotes. We came from a far-off planet and eventually contacted a man named Peter Parker, better known to you as Spider-Man. We are the reason his second suit was black rather than red and blue like the original, but when we bonded with him, he inevitably left an imprint of all his powers within us, which we have enhanced to some extent. For example, his arachnid strength relative to a human was 10 tons without us, but with us, he could lift 20 tons. We improved him, but it never went to his head. Instead, he lived as the perfect hero until he passed away from old age some 40 years later. We offer you his powers and fighting style in an effort to help you become the hero we sense you want to be." Izuku, confused and questioning, sat down in his shower, letting the warm water crash over his body. "You knew Spider-Man? He was America's first recognized superhero. So you're saying you are the reason he inexplicably changed his suit 6 months after his debut? But wait, then why? Why help me? Wouldn't you be better offering your powers to someone like Bakugo? And what exactly is a symbiote? What happened to the others? And how did you even find me in the first place?" Izuku asked, surprised. "We had no partner after Peter died. Since we are symbiotic, we need a partner to survive, so we went into hibernation, assuming we would die eventually because it is unlikely that we would ever find a partner of Peter's caliber. Because of the minor side effects of our bond, which anyone unable to handle would probably go insane over, we did not look for a new partner. Eventually, we were found by a researcher, who brought us to his lab here in Japan. We were kept under his care until we were fused with one of his assistants in an accident. Because he was unable to handle our abilities properly, he went insane and attacked your city." The voice hesitated for a moment at this point, realizing it would be better to slightly mislead Izuku than to explain the controlled chaos that had been created to bring them back together after their first attempt at bonding. We broke off during the fight, and we became bonded to you. We did not resist the bonding at all, because we saw the kind of man you are, young Izuku Midoriya. Your justice and intelligence make you similar to Peter, which is why we want to help you become a hero, and we are willing to give you all of our powers. Izuku thought to the symbiote, I can become a hero. But wait, what are these side effects you mentioned? You might become more aggressive and irrational after bonding with us, especially when you are using us. We don't think this will be a problem for you most of the time, but we feel the need to be honest about it. It's a simple problem to solve, if you work at it. As for the others, nothing too serious, just that you would share our inherent vulnerabilities to fire and sonic waves, which interfere with our ability to shift in the cellular bonds that keep us connected to you for our powers. You won't try to force me to do bad things? You can't control me? We are merely a tool, a partner, no different from a quirk. We just happen to have some sentience. No, young Midoriya. We cannot directly influence any of your actions, nor do we have a desire to. This will be your own free will. What abilities would I then possess? We have all of the powers that the hero Spider-Man possessed because of our time spent with him. These include enhanced senses, quick reflexive nerve pathways, strength comparable to arachnids, limited shapeshifting ability, camouflage, and, most importantly, Peter's spider sense, which is a danger sense that will make you more aware of your surroundings. If you allow us to, we can bind this ability to yourself so that you can use it outside of when we are merged. Izuku exclaimed, This is everything I've ever wanted. I can finally be a hero. It wasn't until the water got colder and he nearly fell and broke his face again that he realized he was still in the shower. Peace, young Midoriya. We know you're excited, but you can't just use our powers. Because of the nature of the moves, unlike his natural fighting ability, we have to teach you and your body how to use the powers. It's okay. I won't let you down. Wait, I don't even know your name. Izuku turned his thoughts back to his new friend and partner. Call us Venom. Alright, Midoriya, go to bed. Tomorrow is your training day. Izuku finds himself at Dagoba's trash-filled beach the next morning, and although he doesn't know why Venom told him to come here, it reassures him that its madness has a purpose. Izuku nervously inquired, So, Mr. Venom, why are we at this beach-turned-garbage dump exactly? As he took in the sight of waste piles just sitting on what were undoubtedly once gorgeous sandy dunes. You don't need to address us as Mr. Young Izuku, we're your partner. We understand that you want to join UA, but we don't think that's the best path for you. You don't need a group of ex-professionals telling you what you can't do because you don't have a license. You may not be aware of this, but while he was still in school, Peter developed into a fully realized hero. His quirk first appeared at the age of 15, making him conceited. However, this changed when his uncle was killed in a manner that Peter believed he could have prevented. This, combined with the advice his uncle gave him, led Peter to resolve that he would never again use his powers for personal gain and would instead use them to aid other people. Izuku inquired, What were these words of wisdom, Venom? With curiosity. Together with our improvements to his innate abilities, Peter's transformation into the renowned hero he would eventually become was made possible by the adage, with great power comes great responsibility. Izuku asked inquisitively, So what do you think I should do? After his partner's somewhat haughty remark made him perspire a little. Our opinion is that you should attend a non-hero academy. We understand that you were drawn to UA due to All Might, but we also understand that you no longer want to attend UA due to his hurtful words. We will assist you in becoming a hero, using the lessons we have learned from Peter's 40 years of active heroism. The teachers at UA are not capable of teaching you how to use us, especially not more effectively than we could. Your new school semester begins in 10 months, young Midoriya. During that time, we will finish your education from a hero standpoint and thoroughly train you in your abilities, making you genuinely a worthy successor of Peter. Izuku was genuinely curious, but he was also excited and felt a sense of pure, unadulterated hope that he had never experienced before as he looked out at the dirty beach. So where do I begin? And how are you going to make me a fully trained hero in just 10 months? He asked. We cannot guarantee that you will be able to use all of our powers without our suit, but you should notice an enhanced healing factor and strength after training. As for Peter's fighting style, we cannot give you the memories of it until you train your body and increase your flexibility. Thus, you're going to aim to clean up this beach in 7 months. This is made possible by a combination of memory sharing and the fact that we will push you to your limits in training. What? As he strolled toward his new school in the early hours of April, with the crisp morning dew still glistening on the windows of the buildings he passed, Izuku yawned and considered the significance of this day, which also happened to be his last test as a symbiote. Calm down, young Izuku. You've been training for the last 3 months, so you're ready for this. Today, you'll let go of your pent-up rage and move on, albeit in a very cathartic way. Thank you, Venom. Your encouragement is much appreciated, but this is pretty much everything I've ever strove to do, aside from being a hero itself. What if I'm not good enough? What if he's better? Izuku worriedly thought back to his partner. A few months of encouragement and validation could not undo years of psychological harm and unrelenting abuse for something that was beyond your control. But Izuku was on the road to recovery, and this would ease the resentment. This will be your first test, and despite your self-doubt, you can do this. You know where he'll be after school. It's time to show him who you really are. Peter wasn't a perfect hero, and for every 5 people he saved, there was one that he didn't. Did this sadden him? Absolutely. Did it stop him? No, if you lose, you lose. There is no shame in defeat, young Izuku. After 8 hours Izuku sat outside the UA gate, waiting for his target, who was clearly visible. He bided his time, and eventually he noticed a Bakugo approaching him from the UA gates by himself. Bakugo snarled, "Deku, what the hell are you doing here, you useless nerd?" Izuku shrugged off a brief moment of panic, telling himself that he was far from defenseless at this point and that he would be damned if he didn't show Bakugo that today. Izuku stammered a little at first, but then he composed himself and spoke freely. "I came to settle things between us. To prove to you that I'm not the same child you cruelly tormented. Thus, I've come to issue a challenge to combat. You, battle with me. Keep me from laughing. I would kill you in a heartbeat." Bakugo scoffed, obviously not thinking this through. "So, demonstrate it. Then, Bakugo, follow me and show me where I belong." Bakugo was drawn to this because Izuku had never called him anything but Kachan before. He actually stopped to look at Izuku, and noticed that he was taller and bigger than before. He scoffed, thinking that height and muscles wouldn't matter. Nevertheless, Bakugo's fatal flaw was his pride, which Izuku had trampled all over with his newfound confidence. Bakugo growled angrily, "Fine then, but don't come crying to me when I blow an arm off of you." Izuku said, "Follow me," and then he started to take Bakugo to the location he was envisioning, an abandoned construction site where they could engage in unrestrained combat. As they made their way to the location, they passed by city blocks and streetlights one after another, until finally, just as the tension was reaching a breaking point, they arrived. Izuku turned to face Bakugo, narrowing his eyes at him in the process. The walk to the location was marked by uneasiness and tension so thick you could cut it with a butter knife. "Bakugo, this is the location. No one can be harmed here, except us," he said in a tone that belied his excitement. His companion said nothing, understanding that Izuku had to grow in this area because he would never be able to move on with his life until he faced and overcome his subconscious anger toward Bakugo. Bakugo, barely able to control himself at this point, said, "You honestly thinking you can hurt me really pisses me off, Deku. Go ahead and do whatever you need to get ready, because I'm going to blast you into tiny little pieces." Bakugo was unnerved by Izuku's smile, but he would never admit it out loud. Izuku's clothes rippled, and something that looked like a black ooze slowly seeped over them, fitting each of his limbs with the mysterious substance until only his head remained untouched and he continued to smile like the Cheshire Cat. How on earth is that, Deku? What on earth is happening?" Unsure of what he was seeing in front of him, Bakugo yelled. This is our quirk," Izuku said calmly as the ooze started to encircle his face. The transformation was now complete, and he stood fully clothed in a sleek black suit with 2 lenses in place of his eyes. A spider symbol was proudly displayed on his chest, with its legs wrapping around his torso and merging on his back. His mask, helmet, Bakugo wasn't sure which to call it, had its own rendition of the manic grin that Izuku had on before his transformation. "I hope you're ready, Bakugo, because we aren't going to hold back." The creature where Izuku stood then lunged at Bakugo, drawing back his hand in preparation to strike him. Bakugo used his explosions to push himself backwards to gain some breathing room. He then tackled Izuku into a nearby support beam. This barely phased Izuku, who then brought his fists down onto Bakugo's back, albeit with less force than he should have used, which still caused Bakugo to release his grip and knock some air out of Bakugo's lungs. Bakugo then released his guard for a moment before his spider sense went haywire and Bakugo detonated his left hand in his face in a point-blank explosion, which shot Izuku away from Bakugo and into a pile of wood, giving him a brief respite. "Izuku, you have to come to terms with the fact that he is actually attempting to kill you," even though you may still believe that he is just that kid you used to be friends with. Izuku straightened up and gave Bakugo a somber look. You're right, Venom. He's changed. And I have to accept that, he sighed. Bakugo thought angrily, this damn loser. He's actually pushing me. As he stood up, an explosion going off in his hands. All right, you dickhead. I've had enough playing around. I'm going to destroy it in you. I don't know how the hell you got a quirk like this, he said, putting his hands together and pointing them toward the woodpile Izuku was currently in. He then released as much nitroglycerin as he could, knowing that this was going to end soon. Die now. Izuku saw the massive blast coming towards him and shot a tendril out of his wrist to pull himself out of harm's way. He then directed his swing so he rammed his shoulder into Bakugo, sending them both into the ground. Bakugo roared as he detonated his secretions, a huge explosion ripping towards Izuku. You think this makes you better than me? Snarled Bakugo. That you have a quirk of some kind? As worthless as you are, so is this quirk. When Izuku heard this, something inside of him exploded, and he started punching Bakugo in the face repeatedly while screaming. Is it really so much fun to be the weak one, Kachan? Bakugo howled in pain as Izuku screamed and planted his left fist on his nose, breaking it with a sickening crunch. How does it feel when you're the one who can't defend himself? Bakugo said. The hits just kept coming, and Bakugo was on the verge of passing out at this point. Are you a piece of shit? Or is Venom good enough to be your friend now? The aggressive amplification of the suit sparked years of pent-up anger and resentment in Izuku's mind. By this time, Bakugo was unconscious, his face swollen from the trauma, his nose bleeding heavily, and he had a deep gash above his right eye. Izuku was suddenly surrounded by flashing lights and sirens filling the night air. Slow down. Avoid moving. The red fog that Izuku had been under suddenly lifted, the reality of the situation hitting him like a bucket of ice-cold water, as he turned to face the two officers who had their guns trained on him. Izuku, you need to get out of here immediately before more police officers or heroes arrive. You can't be caught because your face is covered. You can move a few blocks away, and the suit can recede, allowing you to walk home unhindered. I let my anger control me, and I seriously hurt Bakugo. This wasn't heroic Venom. You didn't give him anything that Punk didn't already have, kid, trust me, now move. With his body web-sling on autopilot, Izuku shot a tendril from his right arm up to one of the support beams and shot quickly up into the night sky. All he could think to himself was, I triumphed over Kachan, but at what cost? In the middle of the night, a middle-aged man in a lab coat and a clipboard entered Bakugo's room. The man was followed by a harrowed-looking police officer who was presumably there to get his statement about what had happened. Bakugo awoke to a bright light and a groan of pain, his face feeling as though it had been hit by a garbage truck. He brought a hand to his face, only wincing in pain at the sensation. Mister, we would like to talk to you about what happened. Bakugo. Has a villain attacked you? If you are unable to speak, nod or shake your head. The officer addressed him as the physician examined his pupils under a flashlight, presumably to rule out a concussion, which he undoubtedly suffered. Well, I'll nip that in the bud really quickly. That damn Deku. He got the better of me. Called himself Venom, did he? I bet he planned to be a hero with that quirk of his. Bakugo thought angrily to himself before speaking. While strolling with a friend from school, I was attacked. Since he had no peculiarities, I told him to go while I guided the villain away from populated areas. He probably doesn't know anything, and I have no idea where he went. When the villain leapt down in front of us, he fled. Nevertheless, I used the largest explosions I could muster to battle the villain, who dismissed everything else I threw at him. In addition, I reasoned that the noise would draw attention, especially from the police or other heroes in the area. That was a very astute move, Mr. Bakugo, since it's against the law to use your quirk in public. However, since you were responsible with its use and are a student, I believe we can overlook it. I'm grateful, sir. Just one more thing. The antagonist addressed himself as Venom. After a few days, Izuku stood numbly, staring at a news report displayed on a TV in a storefront window. Local UA student attacked by new villain called Venom. The anchor proceeded to discuss the still image they had taken from a police dash cam, which displayed his reflective mask lenses glaring at the screen while his mask continued to grin maniacally. He wasn't even aware that the girlish voice was speaking to him until something prodded him in the cheek, because he was so preoccupied with the assault on his character and the realization that his dreams were now much harder. Hey, Freckles. What's up with your long face? After jabbing Izuku in the face with a thin finger, a girl's voice said, Hey there, Freckles. Why the long face? He thought a lot of things as he turned to face the person who had just prodded him. 1. This girl has an alien appearance. That made him feel his partner's annoyance. 2. Her alien appearance was adorable. 3. She was right up against his face, her eyes displaying concern. Her skin tone was pink, which wasn't all that unusual given the increasing prevalence of unusual skin tones in today's world. She had fluffy hair, just like him, but it was pink. Her hair was stuck in tufts, revealing 2 small horns. Her irises were yellow, the sclera in her eyes black. She was also donning the uniform of the UA Hero course. Even though this is entertaining to watch, she seems more worried because you seem to be mumbling and staring at her. Izuku practically yelled at the girl, startling her with his abrupt outburst. I'm sorry. I'm fine. She furrowed her brow in perplexity and then shrugged. With a soothing tone, the girl asked him, "It's okay, dude. Don't worry about it. Anyway, if you don't mind me asking, what's got you down?" It wasn't clear at this point if she was speaking out of genuine concern or just plain nosiness. Curious about the strange girl in front of him, Izuku asked, Sorry, I never got your name. Wouldn't that be important to know before I bombard you with problems?" She gave herself a sheepish expression and gave herself a hard head shake. The girl said with pride and excitement, "Duh. Sorry about that. My name's Mina. Mina Ishido. Nice to meet you, Freckles." Izuku Midoriya. "Nice to meet you too, Mina. My name is Izuku Midoriya." Somehow, Izuku avoided stammering. Forward motion. With a beaming smile, Mina motioned for him to continue with a hand gesture. Mina's eyes widened at this. The person that was attacked by this guy Venom. I actually used to be friends with him. Oh, Bakugo. He's actually in my class at UA. Wow, you were friends with that asshole? I got partnered up with him in a team exercise and all he did was yell and rage at me. He even called me an extra. This caused her eyes to narrow. You're not a jerk too, are you? Mina started laughing out loud as Izuku frantically waved his hands in front of him, trying to deny that he wasn't. I'm just messing with you, dude. Seriously, you looked like a kicked puppy when I saw you, so I had to check on you. Kicked puppy? Izuku asked, clearly perplexed by the analogy. Izuku's face turned beet red at this point. Yeah. Adorable and super sad. Most likely, this was the first time a girl had described him as cute. That was most definitely not in middle school. Bakugo saw it that way. Izuku mumbled, obviously not sure how to handle a situation like this. I'm not sure how I feel about that. She was curious about what was upsetting him, but you never answered my question, Izuku. At least not fully. He said calmly, attempting to hide his true feelings. I guess, I'm upset that I've never heard about this Venom guy before. Quirks are kind of my passion, and the thought of one slipping my notice bothers me. Mina was nothing if not an enthusiastic conversationalist. Wow, you sound like a quirk researcher or something. That's super cool. Izuku said, honestly and passionately, a researcher? No, it's nothing like that. I just really like quirks. They're so cool, and each one is unique. She winked and gave him a peace sign as she said, that's so cool that you have a productive hobby. I just play video games and read manga. Well, that and destroy people in breakdancing. Izuku was startled by this since, aside from Bakugo, this girl was more outgoing than anyone he had ever met. However, Mina appeared to be a kind person. One who was nice to everyone, in contrast to Bakugo. Izuku, not sure if he heard her correctly, asked quietly, you like to breakdance? She smiled at him, and soon Izuku was grinning too. Yeah, dude, it's so much fun. I'm not exactly the smartest person around, but I'm genius at breakdancing, she exclaimed. Her joy was simply too contagious to resist. She had always treated him as though they were lifelong friends. I'll have to show you sometime. Izuku asked, genuinely curious about her plans at one of the most prestigious hero schools in Japan. I think that'd be nice, Mina. So you go to UA? Does that mean you want to be a strong hero someday? She nodded, and went on, I've wanted to be a hero since I was little. The alien queen. I'm sure you noticed that I sort of look like an alien, albeit much cuter than Ridley Scott's. Izuku was unable to exactly express how much cuter she was than an alien himself. He thought he heard his companion making a remark about stereotypes about aliens. She grinned brightly, flashing her brilliant white teeth at him. Anyway, so yeah, my quirk lets me secrete acid from the palms of my hands and feet, so I figured I could be a decent hero with it, she said. Mina, who was obviously unaccustomed to such things, blushed at the praise. That's such a cool quirk, Mina. You could help free people after natural disasters and accidents. Not to mention the combat applicability of your quirk. She was aware that her eccentricity wasn't as spectacular as her appearance, but doubters would have to accept that she was a determined hero. Mina sheepishly asked, not wanting to force her new friend into something he wasn't comfortable with. Thanks, Izuku. Say, do you want to get something to eat? I don't want to cut our conversation short, but I haven't eaten since breakfast because of my combat practical today. I'd like that, Mina. Great, I've got just the place in mind. They conversed as they strolled through the city district. They discussed everything and nothing at all. After passing by every building, they eventually came to LeBlanc Coffee, a small cafe. Izuku was struck by the aroma of freshly brewed coffee as soon as they entered, and did he smell curry? He looked around the store for a moment. There was some really catchy jazz music softly playing in the background of the store. A watercolor image of a mother holding a child was hanging on the wall to their right. A row of booths ran parallel to the counter and led to the back of the store on the left. A small kitchen and a flight of stairs were visible to Izuku from the back. Beside the counter, a TV was mounted on the wall. There had to be at least 50 different jars of coffee beans behind the counter, all with unique labels. A middle-aged man with a somewhat cool appearance stood in front of the jars. His slicked-back black hair looked great. He was wearing jeans, a black and gray apron, and a pink-collared shirt. With a wry smile on his face, he had a cigarette hanging out of his mouth. Sojiro was written on his name tag. He said, "Ah, it's you, Ashido. Welcome back. You want the usual?" With a gentle smile and a deep voice. The man, obviously not enjoying the jab at his age, got a tick mark on his forehead at this. "You know it, Gramps. I could eat a cow." Izuku believed he heard the man say something about brats who were disrespectful. Yeah, coming right up. Just take a seat somewhere. I assume your timid-looking friend here wants the same." Izuku stammered out, obviously not wanting to annoy the man anymore. Yes please." He seated himself on the side nearest the door of a booth near the back, following Mina there. Her eyes glowed up at him. She made finger guns and leaned over conspiratorially, saying, "You can't tell anyone. Otherwise I'd have to kill you. So welcome to my secret base," she exclaimed. Izuku had a bead of sweat forming on his forehead and wasn't sure how to take this. Izuku reassured her firmly, Don't worry, Mina. Your secret is safe with me." She guffawed at this and burst out laughing, holding her sides. Izuku turned red again at this. "Man, you're so gullible. It's seriously freaking cute." He couldn't tell if she was just making fun of him or if she really did find him cute. Fortunately, Sojiro picked that precise moment to deliver their meal and coffee, so he didn't have to find out. Before he spoke, he placed the plates in front of them. Izuku perspired at this, wondering if the man was conceited or just that confident in his cooking. "Here you go, kids. Since it's your first time, kid, I preemptively accept your praise that this is the best damn curry you've ever had." With an answer to his question already in mind, Mina simply smiled back at him. Izuku took a first look at the curry. It contained a few tofu pieces and red. To the left of the curry was a plate of rice, nicely arranged, with a small portion of scrambled eggs on top. He looked up to ask Mina a question, and noticed at once how closely she and Sojiro were staring at him, as if they were waiting to see how he would react to the food. Shaking his head, he chose to give in to their demands. After taking a bite, his eyes grew as big as saucers. "This is the best curry that has ever been made." He let out a virtual shout inside his mind. "Are you able to control it? You never need to yell inside your head. The voices you hear in her are not heard by most people." "I apologize." "Hold on, voices, as in the plural?" "Young Midoriya, we're just kidding. Talk now, or else I think young Ashido will blow up from excitement." "Mina, Sojiro. This is single greatest curry I've ever had in the world." Sojiro simply shrugged this off, obviously not surprised at all. "Of course it is, kid. I made it after all. Anyway, enjoy your stay. Just shout if you need anything." Mina gave him a gentle smile as he left. She paused for a moment, as if taking a trip down memory lane. "I'm glad you like the food, Izuku. You're actually the first person I've brought here. It's kind of out of the way of most people's way home, but my parents brought me here a lot as a kid, so it's a special place to me. Anyways, tell me about yourself, Izuku. I know your quirk bonkers, but I don't really know much else about you. What's your quirk like?" This caused Izuku to freeze, and her final question made her freeze even more. He couldn't just walk up and say, "Oh hey, that scary-looking villain Venom. Yeah, that's me. What's up?" obviously. I used to be a huge fan of All Might, but after I spoke with him, I kind of started to idolize him less. But I do owe All Might for making me want to be a hero in the first place. Up until a few months ago, I actually thought I was quirkless, and I was terrified I wasn't going to become a hero. But my quirk actually manifested then, and since I didn't want to go to UA anymore, I have a private tutor for heroics. These remarks caught Mina's attention, as she questioned why he wasn't already a hero, if he was as interested in heroics as he seemed to be. You thought you were quirkless? Is that why you chose not to go to UA? Partially. The other reason was I wanted to avoid two people. If it's not too nosy of me, can I ask who they were? Izuku said in a somber tone, realizing he was more upset with the two of them than he had initially thought. It's fine. I really didn't want to see Bakugo or All Might. I heard Bakugo got accepted into UA when I was applying to schools, and when I found out All Might was teaching there, I just thought it would be too painful for me to be there. When she asked, "But why did you not want to see them?" Izuku sighed. He didn't want to be impolite, but he also didn't really want to tell her. Izuku's grip tightened around his drink. Bakugo. He and I used to be friends, at least until he developed his quirk. Then he became my #1 bully. Until a delicate, pink hand was placed on top of him, anyway. Hey, Izuku? You don't have to share this if you don't want to. It clearly bothers you. He laughed nervously, but Mina didn't respond. And no, it's fine. It's actually nice having someone to talk things out with. Definitely not something I'm used to. She actually scowled at this, holding back any remarks she might have wanted to make. For the time being, anyhow. As for All Might, well, I spoke to him once, and asked him if it was possible for someone without a quirk to be a hero. He told me that it wasn't. That's why I didn't want to see him. I mean, yeah, I have a quirk now. But I was in a low place when he told me that, and while I know he meant well, it sort of stained the admiration I had for the guy. Mina's scowl widened as Izuku started smiling lightly. But, I have to say, if he hadn't told me that, I wouldn't have discovered my quirk, or the inspiration I derived from it. What do you mean, Izuku? What is your quirk, and who was this inspiration? Not quite the truth, but enough of it to be real. My inspiration was the arachnid hero Spider-Man. Because my quirk is very similar to his. But I don't like to use it a lot because I'm not licensed yet. He simply forgot to say that he didn't give a damn about having a license. With her fingers tapping the table, her brows knitted in confusion as she said, I don't think I've heard of him. Is he new on the scene or something? Izuku chuckled over this. Izuku thought of his predecessor with a soft smile on his face. And no, the opposite actually. He was one of the first heroes ever, and the 6th to surface in America. He was known for being a street-level hero, never being too big to help out the little guy. No matter how popular he got, he never lost sight of his code. Mina couldn't help but think how good his smile made him look. With curiosity, she asked him, what was his code? That with great power, there must also come great responsibility. These were some of the last words he heard from the man he respected the most, and he took them to heart. These remarks touched Mina, and she too recognized the value of the code. I think that's a great code of morals to have, Izuku. It sounds like he was a great man. Mina realized she would be so engrossed in her attention that she'd been hanging on to his every word. He was one of the best. She attempted to shake it off after coughing into her hand. So does that mean you have spider-like powers as well? Because I have to tell you, dude, spiders are pretty creepy. She isn't incorrect, really. To some extent, even Peter detested spiders. Which, considering that he turned their image into a label, is rather ironic. Izuku perspired when she read Mina and Venom's remarks. Although they weren't his favorite, arachnids couldn't really be that horrible, could they? You prefer that I not respond to that? Izuku noticed her waving her hand in front of his eyes and said, Izuku? You okay? You kind of spaced out there for a second? Why yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, my powers are similar to a spider's. It's hard to explain them though. Maybe you can show me sometime then? If it's not too much trouble, that is? This caught Izuku's interest. He wanted to say no right away, if only to salvage his hero image until he could, but he bit his tongue when he looked at Mina. I guess I could show you sometime, Mina. It'll have to wait though. I have a lot of schoolwork to do this week. Mina lost all of her color when she heard this. She waved her arms frantically, saying, oh crap, I just remembered that Mr. Aizawa wanted an essay from us on foreign heroes by Friday. What am I gonna do, Izuku? Izuku whispered, I could help you, if you wanted. This stopped Mina from going crazy. Really, you'd do that, dude? I mean, I won't do your work for you, but I'll provide any information you need. Is it an informal essay? Izuku grinned slightly and said, yeah, it's just on someone we think is cool. Hey, maybe I can do it on Spider-Man. That'd be cool, Mina. Izuku escorted Mina to her train station after they had settled their bill and continued their conversation. When they got to her terminal, Mina halted and faced Izuku. Well, this is my stop. With genuine enjoyment, Izuku said, I'm enjoyed out hanging out today, Mina. It was nice to talk about heroes and stuff with someone else. She held her hand out expectantly to Izuku, and he eventually handed her his phone. Well, who said it had to be a one-time thing? Here, give me your phone. With a few quick finger swipes and screen button clicks, he was able to get her phone number. She hit the call button, storing his number in her phone. He casually observed that she had called him Spider Freckles. He didn't know how to react to that. She moved from one to the other, saying, see, now we can chat anytime we want, Freckles. She called him cute once more, and was she flirting with him? We should do this again soon. I don't generally get to spend time with cute boys that try to help me be a better hero. He was at a loss as to how to handle this. It's not trouble, Mina. I enjoyed our time as well. She asked abruptly, taking Izuku by surprise. Well, since you agreed to help me with my essay, how about we meet up again tomorrow? Well, we could if you want. She exclaimed. Great, it's a date then. Later, Freckles. As she bounced off to her gate. A date? Izuku cried out inwardly. Mina, who obviously didn't know much about the history of one of the first people to use their powers for good, asked with curiosity. So basically, Spider-Man was seen as an outcast until the government formally recognized superhero as a profession? She gave a few coughs, but Izuku didn't mention it because she assumed she had sipped her tea too quickly. That's right. People were still scared about the advent of quirks, and they didn't know what this meant for society as a whole. But it was thanks to the actions of heroes like Spider-Man that reassured the worries of the people. Spider-Man was actually the first superhero to be honored by a country leader. Izuku displayed an image of Spider-Man shaking hands with the President of the United States. George Sears, President. As you can see in this picture, President Sears awarded Spider-Man the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian award in the United States, for his actions in search and rescue in the aftermath of a hurricane. Spider-Man left his home city in the hands of his wife, Felicia Hardy, who was the super thief turned superhero, Black Cat, while he himself went into South Carolina's affect areas, and helped with clearing rubble and getting people out of collapsed homes. This was what made Spider-Man into America's most legendary hero, and solidified the public opinion that quirks were a force for good. Izuku finished his speech, taking a sip of his drink. He was helping Mina with her paper right now while they were sitting in LeBlanc. As she had stated, she had selected Peter Parker to represent her. She informed him that although her teacher expressed surprise at her knowledge of Spider-Man, as long as it's in by Friday, I don't care. So, Izuku. Mina started, is this a date? Izuku shot straight and ramrod at this. Mina continued, unaware. She proceeded despite coughing once more. It's cool if it isn't, and I know what I said yesterday, but my mom said something when I told her my plans for today. She said, have fun with your date. I know I'm probably overthinking it, since we haven't known each other long. But I honestly wouldn't mind if it was, you know. In the meantime, in Izuku's mind, oh my god, this is happening. Izuku was handling things quite skillfully. This pretty girl, I think, was trying to find out what your intentions were. Which you ought to reply to, I think. It's simple for you to say that, you're a vague, squishy mess. You're not having trouble dating. Specifically, a seductive, amorphous blob. And hello, have you actually seen Peter's wife's photos? I was the only one who could have helped him land and get a ring on that. Hold on, convey this to her. Izuku blushed as he listened to his partner, but he soon pulled himself together. After giving one cough, he turned to face Mina and said. He began so effortlessly and ended so tritely, oh only a fool would say no to a date with you, a pinky. Mina flushed and burst out laughing. She gave him a warm smile and sent butterflies or some other bug into his stomach. Ahaha pinky, I love it. Honestly, Izuku, how can you be cool and dorky in the same sentence? I guess I'll just have to stick around and find out. Not exactly how I had it executed, but I can't argue with the outcome, kid. Stick around. Izuku had used up all of his hip factor for the day by this point. She reassured him, saying, well, yeah, you're fun, Izuku, and you're a pretty cool guy. Izuku blushed once more and could hardly form complete sentences, let alone coherent thoughts. Besides, You're cute, which is a perk. She noticed and then asked, almost shyly, it's getting pretty late. Plus, I'm basically done with the paper anyway. Wanna walk me to my station? With a smile, Izuku said, sure, Mina, I'd like that. And paid their bill. They left LeBlanc and made their way to the station. When they got there, Mina looked up at him. Izuku, thank you so much for your help. I really appreciate it. Plus, I had fun. Something I never thought I'd say about schoolwork. Mina grinned at him again, her brilliant smile serving as a charming portrait of her vivacious personality. He started to say, like I said Mina, it was no trouble at all but she abruptly gave him a hug, sending him into a near-nuclear meltdown. Izuku's partner received extremely well-reasoned words back, adskulkjajfh. Mina sounded uncertain at the moment, as if she was concerned she'd gone too far with her gratitude. Was it okay for me to hug you, Izuku? Izuku exclaimed, and no. Before he could even breathe. It was fine. I enjoyed it actually. I just don't get many hugs from people other than my mom. Especially girls. In theory, your mother is a woman. I sound so much like Sigmund Freud, wow. Never mind. I should forget saying that. Izuku glaringly disregarded his partner's remarks. But he looked at Mina instead. She gave him another smile and then released him. Izuku started to say, sorry. I tend to just get overwhelmed with my feelings that I just kind of hug people sometimes. I did mean it, though. But the PA system interrupted. Mina leapt at the announcement that she was going to miss her train. Attention, the last train bound for East Mustafa City is departing shortly. Please make your way to the boarding area. She turned around to face him again and yelled, oh crap. If I miss the train again, I'll have to call my brother. And he'll just make fun of me the whole way back. Before running off. Bye Izuku, I'll text you. Izuku did not know how else to respond to this and just sort of waved lamely. She is fond of you, Yuu. The following day, Izuku was aimlessly strolling through Mustafa City, lacking a clear destination. He was actually attempting to patrol the city, but that might not be the best idea after realizing that his childhood bully had been technically wanted for beating the living daylights out of him. He had actually skipped school today for that reason. Heroism takes precedence over spending hours in a classroom. Besides, he knew he had no tests today. He is merely strolling around in the hopes of coming across a mugging or something similar. His phone suddenly beeps to let him know he has a text message. When he takes out his phone, Alien Queen has left him a message. The Alien's Queen. Hello, spooks. I'm sick, so I skipped school, but now I'm really bored. I really think you should skip class and hang out with me. 3. After reading her message, Izuku reasoned that he might as well spend the day with Mina as he wasn't going to be doing anything anyhow. Spider Freckles. Of course, where are you getting together? Alien Queen. Well, I'm actually in Midtown, close to the train station. If you would like, I can wait for you. Spider Freckles. Sounds good, I'll be over there shortly. Izuku put his phone away and searched for an alleyway nearby. In any case, he had to get more practice using his powers for mobility. He muttered to himself, okay, as long as I don't fully transform, I should be okay. He climbed up the alley wall, smearing his symbiote on his hands and feet. When he reached the roof, he ran across the rooftops while donning a half mask over his mouth and nose to access his partner's reflexive enhancements. He soon reached a ledge too far out to jump without help, so he ran and zipped himself to the other rooftop with a tendril. After landing, he took off once more and ran until he got close to the location where Mina had indicated she was waiting. After descending the wall of an additional alley, he allowed his companion to move away. As he emerged from the alley, he noticed Mina seated on a bench. Even though she appeared a little under the weather, her face lit up the moment she saw him. With innocent curiosity, she said, "Hey, Freckles. You got here quick. Were you nearby when I called?" He was perspiring a little. Yeah, something like that. How convenient. Anyways, apparently I missed out on some super hush-hush training exercise at school today. Lame. It sounded like fun when my friend Toru told me about it. Though I guess she's busy, because I haven't heard anything else from her. That was a couple hours ago, actually. I'm sorry you didn't get to go, Mina. She gave a triumphant wave as she said, don't sweat it too much, Freckles. There will be other trips where I show how awesome I am. She then grabbed his hand and dragged him into the station. So what do you want to do since we're both being delinquents and skipping class? Izuku considered this for a moment, though her holding his hand undoubtedly made him think more slowly. I was thinking we could go for a walk on the edge of town near the woods. I thought the clean air of nature might help your illness a bit. Ah, look at you being all cute and thoughtful. Izuku remained silent, but his flushed face revealed a lot about him. Mina said in astonishment as she surveyed the wooded area, "Man Izuku, you weren't kidding when you said the air here was clean. I feel my sinuses and stuff clearing up already." "Yeah, I thought it might. Say Mina, can I ask you something?" she said, smiling teasingly. "You just did, but you can also ask another question too. I was wondering how being sick affects your quirk." "Oh, is that all? Sheesh, I thought you were gonna ask me something super personal like what color my underwear is today." She waved him away. Mina, no. Anyway, I was curious. It sort of depends. I have a fever, so the sweat sort of clogs my pores and affects my ability to adjust acidity of my secretions. But other than that, most sickness doesn't really impact my quirk too much." "Oh, that's really interesting actually, although I guess you probably wouldn't find yourself in a situation where you needed to use your power if you were sick, since heroes have sick days." She stopped as they were walking and said, Hey, wait a minute, do you hear that, Izuku?" As the whistling sound grew louder and louder. When she raised her gaze to the sky to see what was causing it, she noticed a dot that was expanding every second. Izuku saw it too, and he couldn't help but feel his spider sense starting to prick him. He was unsure of the reason. The only possibility is that. "Mina, we need to move. My sense just went off, which means that something is heading our way." Taking hold of her hand, he hurriedly drew them back about 30 feet before his sense gradually faded. He saw, though, that it hadn't entirely faded. Just as he opened his mouth to speak, something suddenly crashed where they had just been standing. They noticed what appeared to be a monster from a horror film as they got closer to the crater. It appeared human, but its skin had the color of charcoal, as if it had been burned by some kind of fire. Its body was covered in angry red scars, and it was incredibly muscular. It was wearing some shorts with skull-shaped knee pads. And its head was the most horrifying thing about it. Its beak resembled that of a bird, but the fact that its brain was on display somehow added to the creature's terrifying nature. As Mina approached to feel its pulse, Izuku's spider sense became uncontrollably aroused. But it was already too late. "Mina, look out!" Abruptly, the creature caught her by the throat and rose to its feet. Its stupid eyes scanned the clearing before settling on Izuku. "This is terrible, kid. We need to release her. If not, she might break her neck. Moreover, she is too ill to assist herself. It is not a choice for us. We must exert all of our strength." Izuku's form transformed into Venom's without any more convincing, the svelte bodysuit taking shape as fast as it could. A few seconds later, his mask took shape, its white sclera narrowing menacingly. "We would appreciate it if you put down our friend." Blood spurted from a few of the creature's teeth as it clicked a few times without making any visible movement. Izuku shot a tendril into a tree behind the creature and zipped into it, ramming his shoulder into its solar plexus and forcing it to drop Mina. "So you're injured then? Normally we wouldn't fight an injured, whatever the hell you are, but you're trying to hurt our friend." Her eyes widened as she recognized the masked figure who had freed her from the monstrosity as she stumbled weakly to another nearby tree and faced the battle. Venom. Izuku was too preoccupied with dodging the flailing fists of whatever the hell this thing was to show that he heard her. This thing resembles the ugly offspring of Big Bird and Solomon Grundy. With his hands locked with the monster's, Venom growled through gritted teeth, "Now is not the time for quips, symbiote." Then it raised him up and hurled him against a tree, causing it to split into splinters. Venom stood up again to confront the creature, coughing, "Grah. Damn, that hurt." Venom studied the creature for a moment, saying, "This thing is stronger than us, which says something since our limit is 20 tons. We can't brute force it, because it shrugs off blunt force trauma." Its exposed brain meant that it could be taken advantage of. It appeared to be thinking only instinctively and lacking any cognitive ability. "All right, creature, let's see how you handle this." Venom charged at the creature, moving stealthily close to a tree while dodging its blows with his spider sense. It kept swinging at him, missing each time, right hook, left hook. As it approached the tree sufficiently, Venom launched his body and arms forward, tackling the creature into the base of the tree. He then launched two web tendrils to the opposite side, jumped back, and wrapped the tendrils around the creature, tying it to the tree. Struggling against the webbing, the creature attempted to shatter it. But as the monster struggled to break free of its bonds, the tree was being torn in half. Venom cried out in frustration, "Crap! How the hell are we supposed to put this creature down? Its brain is going to have to be bashed in. Even though we are aware that it may cause brain damage, something needs to be done about it." At this, Venom rushed back towards the monster, repeatedly striking it in the beak, until it brought it down and headbutted Venom with the force of a rhino. "Fine, but we won't kill it." Ignorant, Venom could not prevent the beast from slamming its shoulder into him, sending them both sprawling to the ground. After kicking the creature off of him, Venom used his left arm to drag it in the direction of a boulder and his right arm to encircle it with a tendril. In an acrobatic move that would have made many gymnasts envious, Venom tied the left and right strands together before they made contact and kicked the creature off the ground and toward the rock that was holding it. Venom put his knees up against its shoulders and started giving it a severe beating on its head until it passed out. Venom sagged back and hit the floor, his mask tucked away inside his outfit. Taking several deep breaths, he realized that he would break a few ribs fighting the monster. The sound of police sirens suddenly filled the air, and Izuku realized he had to flee once more. Just as he turned to search for Mina, he was abruptly assisted in standing up. Mina said, her strangely colored eyes showing concern, "Go, before they find you. I'll tell them you saved me." She then gave him a cheek kiss and gave him a gentle prod to help him get away. "Thank you." Izuku swallowed and nodded. "We will talk later though, Freckles," and zipped through the trees until he was certain he was safe. As Mina watched him leave, she had a single thought in her mind. Freckles as Venom. After a few hours, perched on a rooftop, Mina and Izuku watched the lights of the city below. There was growing silence between them as the twinkling lights came and went. At last, Izuku was the one who broke it. He said simply, as if that wasn't a contentious issue at the moment, "We are Venom." She didn't know of any other crimes he'd committed, so at worst, he was a villain, at best, he was a vigilante. She exclaimed, "Well no duh, Freckles," with frustration. With a playful smile, she said, "Though I gotta admit, that suit doesn't leave much to the imagination. Wouldn't have pegged you as a show-off." Izuku was shocked to see her after hearing what he had just heard, but he soon realized that she was not fleeing in fear. She was eyeing him with respect instead. And another thing he was unable to identify. "Yes, I can. Not right now," Izuku said haltingly, clearly fascinated by the clump of grass beside his feet. "I would have told you, Mina. I just didn't want to scare you off so quickly after meeting you." "Dude, you realize you're considered a villain, right?" "Yes. But are you? No." Izuku looked up at her when she said, "Then that's good enough for me." Once more, their gazes locked, and she reduced the gap in their separation. He sputtered angrily, "You also unveiled a huge secret in order to protect me. That makes you a hero." "My hero." She took his hand in hers and led him to the railing. "Izuku, you saved my life today. Now granted, while you could argue it's your fault we were there in the first place," she said with a teasing grin. Still, she held onto it tightly. "Izuku, when you look at this city, what do you see?" I see a place worth protecting. For more than just the financial gain of doing so." She narrowed the gap even further, saying, "Exactly. You do what's right, not because it pays well, but because you genuinely want to help people. That's what I like about you." She gave him a kiss after that. After a few weeks, Izuku watched the news coverage of the UA Sports Festival while lounging on his mother's living room couch. Mina qualified for the finals based on her performance in the second event, where she had done fairly well in the first. He texted her while they were preparing for the third event, expressing his excitement to see her perform and his happiness for her. A minute later, she answered, "If I win, can we kiss again?" Semicolon closing parenthesis . He dropped his phone in shock at this. He was about to respond when the news switched to a Venom special. In other news, the Superhero Ethics Committee and the police denounced the actions of the villain-turned-vigilante known as Venom as unsafe and unethical. However, Venom saved a local UA student from a creature that was involved in the USJ attack a few weeks ago, which led many to question his status as a villain. Other actions by Venom include stopping a few small robberies and saving many people from muggings. One officer had this to say: "What Venom is doing may seem like a great idea on paper, but he's a lone wolf, which means he doesn't report to anyone. Even though he's not getting paid, that means he only reports to himself, which is a dangerous place to be. We now switch to one of our field reporters interviewing people in real time about their opinions of Venom. The scene changes to show a reporter standing next to a man who has lost his nose and has a disfigured face. He had a rather pointy chin, a red scarf, and dreadlocks. "Sir, you said that you support what Venom does. Why is this?" Venom is a true hero, much like All Might. He does his work not because it is profitable, but because it is the righteous path. He is not like these gaudy pretenders who are no different than mercenaries enforcing the law for financial gain. Venom, if you are hearing this, I want you to know that I too will carry on this path. The news switched back to the studio as the man ended his statement and left. It seems that we took longer than anticipated to complete the UA Sports Festival finals, but it's still fascinating stuff. Next up is the match between Hitoshi Shinso and Nito Monoma. Izuku was watching the fight and listening to how everyone saw Shinso's quirk as villainous. "He's like me," he thought to himself, eyes fixed on the television, as Monoma kept rushing him and attempting to touch him for an explanation that the announcers hadn't felt fit to provide. Shinso's quirk, known as brainwashing, apparently allowed him to control people based on their answers to his questions. However, the fight ended when Shinso made a comment about how superior Class 1A was, which caused Monoma to freak out and scream about how overrated they are. As a result, Shinso brainwashed him and made him cartwheel out of the ring. "Yes, the boy is a kindred spirit. I believe we should go find him. Having a Shido as an ally will definitely help, but you also give your group access to a versatile quirk by assisting Shinso. So, we've formed a group. Not quite, but you're going to end up with a team of heroes, and believe me, kid, you want that guy in your corner, especially if you're anything like Peter, which you definitely are." "I get it. We can talk to him soon." Izuku had been watching Hitoshi Shinso for the past week in an attempt to find out his schedule. Venom insisted that it would improve his situational awareness and serve as useful practice for when he had to pursue criminals. He was careful to limit the amount of time he spent wearing his half-mask, gloves, and boots as part of his partial suit. This made it possible for him to move across the rooftops and stay mostly undetected as he followed Shinso. At the moment, Shinso was strolling alongside a girl sporting pink dreadlocks, who was adjusting some sort of helmet while gesturing towards Shinso. She answered his question, stiffened, and began dancing like a chicken for a little while before looking around, removing the helmet, and frantically starting to scribble in a notebook. Izuku believed she was trying to make a helmet that would block Shinso's abilities, but she had failed. After chuckling a little, Shinso gave her a shoulder pat and turned to leave. He continued to walk until he entered a dim alleyway, which made Izuku think something wasn't right. "You can come out now. You've been following me for about a week now, so why don't you come down and talk me, instead of stalking me?" Shinso yelled as she turned to face him. How on earth did he see us? Izuku furiously pondered. Because of his peculiarity, he needs to be acutely aware of his surroundings and very perceptive. He wouldn't be able to utilize his quirk to its full potential otherwise. This simply confirms to me that he is the best option for our group. Izuku let out a small sigh and moved to stand in front of Shinso, making sure that Shinso was the one nearest the alley's mouth so as to gently suggest that he wasn't there to harm him. Then Izuku produced a sketchbook and a pen. Shinso said dryly, trying to look uninterested in the conversation. "Well, that answers a couple questions I had, namely whether you were here to hurt me and whether you had knowledge of my quirk." "Interesting." Izuku turned the pad towards Shinso and wrote, "I'm not here to hurt you," as soon as she nodded. At this, Shinso arched an eyebrow. "I figured, otherwise you'd be a pretty shitty assassin, seeing as you gave me the quick escape route." Izuku sighed and wrote out his response once more. "I understand that this might be interpreted as a hostile approach, but I had no idea how else to contact you. So if you aren't here to hurt me, then what are you here to do then?" Shinso asked, cocking his head to the side before continuing. "This is where it gets tough, kid. You need to persuade him that coming along with you will make him a hero." Izuku chewed on his lip, not sure exactly what to say. "Can we rely on you not to use your quirk if we communicate with you verbally?" "It's dangerous, young one. Extremely dangerous. However, it could be the motivation you need to gain his trust." That was definitely not what Shinso was expecting. He looked at Izuku, as though gauging his own reaction. "You should know my quirk isn't completely under my conscious control. I can exert influence sure, but anyone who talks to me has a minor risk for a degree of mind control. Most people can ignore the passive effects though, unless they're exceptionally stupid. I doubt that'll be the case with you. So yes, I promise to play nice if you will. Izuku gave Shinso a smile and held up a hand. Izuku Midoriya, it's a pleasure to finally meet you, Hitoshi Shinso. Shinso wondered out loud, Izuku Midoriya. Why do I feel like I've heard that name somewhere before? Shinso didn't use his quirk because he wanted to take a moment to think. Did a pink girl with horns happen to yell my name in front of you? Ah, that explains it. You guys friends or something? Dating actually. Hey, nice. She seems energetic but kind. She is. But we can talk more about pleasantries after we jump to the reason why we're here. And why are we here, Izuku? Don't keep me in suspense. Now that he had revealed his quirk, Shinso took control and said, we wanted to recruit you. Izuku leapt up immediately. Who are you really? Izuku said in a monotone, Izuku Midoriya, age 16. We are the hero known as Venom. He was screaming inside because he was freaking out. Venom, please help. He is in complete control. Child, I'm working on it. Why did you really come here? We told you the truth. We wish to recruit you. And what are you trying to recruit me for, exactly? Izuku started to falter at this point, stopping himself mid-sentence. Izuku began to move forward before collapsing to the ground and convulsing. Turn yourself into the nearest police station. Don't hurt anyone on the way there, and don't use your powers to get there. When Shinso realized this, he retreated a step. Shinso's control snapped as his eyes widened in shock and he exclaimed, we want to be heroes too. Izuku rushed toward Shinso and put his hand over his mouth. We will gladly surrender if you still want to turn us in. Please just listen to us. Izuku inhaled deeply, understanding what he had to say. I was born quirkless. I didn't know it for a while, until my best friend at the time manifested his, and well. I didn't. I wanted to believe so badly that I was just a late bloomer, that I slowly deluded myself into actually believing it. Life was rough. My best friend turned into my greatest source of torment, and my mother could barely keep from crying whenever I talked about being a hero to help support her. But through all this, I kept smiling, never letting my hope that I'd one day get a quirk fade. Izuku grinned wistfully, recalling his inspiration constant encouragement. Then his face became serious. With a confused expression on his face, Shinso said, that changed when the person I looked up to the most told me I was wasting my time. He then nodded to Izuku. Izuku let go of him, took a step back, and sat down. Mirroring him, Shinso slid along the wall until he came to rest on the floor. Who was the person you admired? Izuku sighed slightly at this, but she still responded, All Might. Shinso looked surprised, obviously not expecting that. He said with a wry smile and a dejected glance up at the sky, Okay, now I'm definitely interested in you, Izuku. Tell me more. I know what it's like to be an underdog. Yeah, I can imagine so. I don't want to assume too much, but I'm guessing people tell you how villainous your quirk is a lot. Izuku asked with care. Shinso gave a bitter laugh. Shinso shook his head and sighed at the obviously unpleasant memories. Yeah, you could say that. My friends in middle school stopped talking to me because of the nature of my quirk. They were worried I'd make them do something humiliating if they pissed me off. Eventually, I guess I just sort of came to hate my quirk a bit. You can't. Your quirk is ideal for heroic work, Shinso said, locking eyes with Izuku right away despite his obvious skepticism. He pointed to his vocal cords and said, Oh yeah, how am I gonna use this for the betterment of people? At this point, riot dispersal for one, hostage negotiation is another situation you could perfectly handle. Talking a guy off a ledge. Sometimes, Hitoshi, a hero doesn't have to use flashy quirks to make a difference. Sometimes, it's their words that have the most impact. With your quirk, I see big things from you. I think you can be a great hero. And if you'd like, we can show the world that the quirks don't define the hero. Our character does. Izuku genuinely smiled at Shinso, who was overcome the generosity of his speech. Izuku's statements were all things he fervently wanted to believe about his peculiarities, but his own fears prevented him from doing so. Hatsume was the only other person, apart from his parents, who had ever found his peculiarity endearing. Despite her good intentions, she gave off the impression of being a bit of a test subject in a lab. He shuddered because he could almost hear her insane cackling from here. Izuku asked again, So what do you say, Hitoshi? Hitoshi held out his hand to shake Izuku's, saying, I think you can count on me, Izuku. Izuku took a brief look down before grinning and offering his own, thus concluding their partnership. Hitoshi inquired with his customary drawl, so Izuku, you said you're dating Mina Ashido, correct? That's correct, Izuku said, glancing at him before continuing on her way to the covert base. So, would you happen to have any advice on asking a girl out then? There's someone I'm interested in, but I don't really know how to broach the topic with her. This wouldn't happen to be about that girl with the pink dreadlocks, would it? Yeah, her name is Hatsume, and despite her eyeballing me like a mad scientist 60% of the time, she's good company. They were getting close to LeBlanc now, which Izuku had taken over as his own super secret base from Mina. Not exactly top secret, as it was a public cafe, but there was a definite air of espionage about it. We're almost there. Mina is meeting us there, and I want to discuss some aspects of this team we're forming. You mentioned that you want to form a team. To what end? I want to maximize the amount of people I can save. And to do that, I need a team with a diverse range of quirks. But I don't see myself as a leader. Rather, I want this to be a group of peers, each one standing equally among ourselves. The crowd was thicker than usual for a weekday as they made their way through it. More traffic was likely to occur as people walked to a different station since one of the trains was probably down. I see. Subsequently, they engaged in small talk, discussing their aspirations and the reasons behind their great admiration for heroes. Soon, they found themselves at LeBlanc. A pink blur crashed into Izuku as they entered. Hi Freckles, Izuku exclaimed, his face nearly going nuclear as his eyes grew large as dinner plates. Mina was giving him a tight hug, as if she were cuddling up to him like a cat. Mina, she exclaimed as she turned to face him and gave him a quick peck on the cheek. I missed you. It's been a week since we've hung out. School has been kicking my ass. Freckles. Mina turned to face the man who might have been Aizawa's long-lost son upon hearing a different voice. So is this the guy for that thing we talked about? She murmured conspiratorially as she swiftly turned Izuku around. Izuku nodded and said, yes, that's Hitoshi Shinso. Excuse me, he looks kind of like my teacher. You realize I can hear you, right? Yeah, Mina, but he's a good guy. With a frustrated expression on his face, he prodded them in the should and asked, as the ignore Hitoshi show over yet. With a sheepish gesture, they both turned to face him again and rubbed their necks. Together, they said, sorry. Anyway, Izuku said, taking a quick look around before focusing on their booth towards the back of the cafe. Let's take a seat and get down to business. After placing their orders with Boss Sojiro, they all sat down at the table, Mina next to Izuku and Shinso across from them. Mina took Izuku's hand in hers, smiled triumphantly, and squeezed his hand. He reddened slightly but remained silent. Shinso had the usual LeBlanc curry reaction and they postponed talking business until after they had eaten. It was pretty bold of him to ask Sojiro the recipe for the divine curry he had prepared. With a laugh, Sojiro revealed that his friend, who was interested in science, had converted the recipe into a chemical formula in order to optimize the effects of each component. Hitoshi stored that knowledge for later use, thinking, if a scientifically prepared meal can't attract Hatsume's attention, I don't know what will. The next time, he would most definitely try to get Hatsume to accompany him. Izuku cast a quick glance at Shinso and Mina. They both nodded at him, and Mina gave him a comforting squeeze on his hand, which made him say something. I want to form a team with you guys. Mina and Shinso both nodded in agreement, knowing that this was what they wanted to do. It was still better to be absolutely clear from the start. But since my alter ego isn't exactly the most well-liked guy in the city right now, we'd basically be vigilantes, the other members shrugged, not really anticipating a different designation. Izuku and Mina both looked at Hitoshi at this, not sure what he was going to say. Before you go on, Izuku, I want you to up front with the both of us. There was a reason you were labeled as a villain initially. Care to explain what led that to happen? Izuku let out a sigh. It wasn't an unreasonable question, so he should have known this would come up. It was my childhood bully, Katsuki Bakugo, the UA student I fought, Mina exclaimed, causing Hitoshi's eyes to narrow. Kachan. He used to be my friend, but when he found out I was quirkless, he saw it as his duty to beat any notion of being a hero that I had out of me. The idea seemed to offend him on a personal level. I tried not to let it get to me, but I eventually did once my quirk manifested. At the insistence of my teacher, I sought out Bakugo for a match. This was to serve as my final exam in my teacher's training, as well as a growing exercise for myself as a person. I lost control of myself, with the years of suppressed anger and resentment bubbling up when I had him at my mercy. I was about to drag him to a hospital, but that's when the cops showed up, and they took the sight before them at face value. Bakugo probably did nothing to clear this up, as he clearly hates me, but would never acknowledge it was me who did that to him. I can only assume he heard our hero name in between the introductions my fist had with his face. Hitoshi said inanely, "Don't you think you went a little overboard?" "I do and I don't. One of the last conversations I had with Bakugo involved him telling me to jump off a building so I could maybe have a quirk in the next life." Hitoshi's and Mina's eyes grew wide. Hitoshi repeatedly opened and closed his hand as Mina threw her hand over her mouth. Hitoshi remained silent as Mina pulled him into an embrace. "That's awful. I'm so sorry, Freckles. What kind of hero tells someone to kill themselves?" Izuku gave the two of them a comforting smile, obviously having moved past it. "It's fine. My issues aren't what we are here to discuss." After giving a nod, Hitoshi said, "You're right. Tell us about your team idea." Izuku inhaled deeply. "That was it. Pro-heroes don't seem like they know why they fight anymore. I'm not saying they're all bad, but take Endeavor for instance. There are some unsettling rumors about him, specifically as a father. Nothing confirmed, but he's the number 2 hero. That's concerning. I want to remind the hero industry why it exists in the first place. That its duty is to the people first, and not their sponsors. I agree with everything you just said, but as this team stands now, I don't think it will work." Izuku turned to face Hitoshi and motioned for him to express his opinions. "First off, you're still considered a villain, at least at the moment. Secondly, I'm a nobody at the moment. Ashido isn't a known entity either. This means we have any lack of claim to legitimacy beyond our own claims to the contrary. And what do you call someone without credibility? A nutjob." Izuku breathed a sigh of relief. Mina said, "What's so funny? You did just say this was impossible." "When did I ever say that? I just pointed out we need another member. And it just so happens, I have 2 in mind." Izuku asked, "Who?" It was on both of their minds. Hitoshi said, "Shoto Todoroki and Mei Hatsume." "Todoroki?" Izuku asked, his mind starting to turn in circles. Todoroki would be ideal, indeed. He had a strong quirk, and since he was Endeavor's son, the police couldn't really ruin his day unless they made a huge mistake. Being the son of the second-ranked hero, Shoto also gives them a level of legitimacy that they would not currently have. To protect Endeavor's reputation, his presence alone might eventually elicit an outreach from the police and the Hero Ethics Committee. He turned to face Hitoshi and Mina after being startled out of his reverie by Mina's comment, Freckles. You're muttering a lot." He gave a sheepish laugh. "Sorry, that's just a thing I do. But you have a point, Hitoshi. Todoroki would give us the degree of validity we need to continue operating. That just leaves us with 2 problems. How do we convince him? And when do we do it?" With a cough, Mina expressed her desire to join in. "Actually, I have some thoughts about that. See, hero internships start in 2 days. I know for a fact Todoroki is being forced to do it with his dad in Hosu." Izuku and Hitoshi exchanged a look as the cogs in their respective heads started turning. Hitoshi gave a nod. Hitoshi blushed a little at this and then coughed. "Then that's when we approach him. In 2 days at Hosu. Now what's the story about the Hatsume girl? Mei is sort of driven by experimentation. All we have to tell her she can have her babies being field tested and she'd build us a damn tank if we wanted. But we'll need costumes and names. In your case, Mina, you can't use your hero name you gave in school." Mina was beaming. "I actually gave out something different when we chose names today, and saved the name I wanted. You can count on Alien Queen for backup from now on." She gave Izuku a wink and a peace sign. Izuku and Hitoshi gasped at this, not knowing how in the world they could respond. "Please tell me you didn't use the name I think you did, Mina." "Oh, I absolutely did. Pinky is officially a registered hero name. Child, how does it feel to know you made a hero?" "Thankfully, her name isn't as ridiculous as Dogwelder." Izuku turned away from Venom and gave Hitoshi a hopeful glance. He simply shrugged. "The only name I was able to even halfway like was Brainjacker. And even then, it sounds kind of sinister." "How about Hivemind?" Mina asked, pausing briefly before asking the 3 of them to blink. Hitoshi nodded wisely, That's surprisingly good. That's definitely my codename now. Izuku let out a sigh but continued. Okay, so names are taken care of, now we just need to discuss outfits and gear. I'm set, as my quirk naturally handles that. But Mina needs a new outfit, to hide her identity, and Hitoshi, you need something as well, along with something that will carry your voice, along with some self-defense tools. I know some Aikido, and I was planning to carry a microphone and a taser until I can convince Hatsume to make something for me. I'll ask her to make something for Mina as well next time I see her. Mina gave a nod. I was actually wanted to make some changes. Maybe some body armor, and something to store my acid in like Bakugo does with his sweat. It'd put less strain on me in bad situations. Leave it to me, I'm pretty good at convincing people. They gave Hitoshi a horrified look. What? I don't even need my power. Just say, I need gadgets and Hatsume will practically make anything you ask her to. Izuku and Mina simply nodded and continued to sip their tea, not knowing quite how to react. Izuku abruptly woke up and realized something. Guys, we don't have a team name. With a bored expression, Hitoshi asked, is that really important? Mina asked, yay, Izuku, isn't it more important that our actions matter? Izuku said calmly, his excitement gradually rising. It is. We need to say who we are, and what we are about. I have a name idea, but I'm going to wait until we have Todoroki and Hatsume on board before we release our manifesto. Things would get better soon enough. Within the main UA office. With his fingers clenched in front of him, Nedzu said, so All Might, you see my point, yes? Given the unnatural acceleration of the loss of your powers, and the frightening nature of all for one's threat, we need to take drastic measures. Perhaps young Bakugo is the answer to that. After all, how does one respond to an unstoppable force? By responding with an equally unstoppable force. The symbol of peace worriedly said, I get your point, Headmaster, but I'm worried about him trying something he can't handle. I know, Yagi, this isn't ideal, think of it as a trial basis. Bakugo, for all his bluster, respects you. If you told him that you changed your mind and wanted a different successor, he would accept that. Not happily mind you, but he'd accept it. Yagi let out a sigh. Fine, I'll talk to him, but this Mirio kid interests me. If Bakugo doesn't pan out, I think he'd a good fit. Nedzu sipped his tea candidly and said, agreed. If nothing else, the addition of Bakugo's power into the pool of One for All is worth this test run, regardless of the outcome. Yagi nodded and stood up to go, saying, no matter how you look at it, Bakugo's power will play a role in the resolution of this conflict. Bakugo was waiting in the classroom. All Might scratched the back of his head, explained the idea, which mainly involved playing on Bakugo's pride, and then launched into another speech. So you understand what I'm telling you, young Bakugo. One for All is quirk passed down among generations. I'm going to be totally honest with you, Bakugo. I don't think you're the right choice for my successor, but I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt at the headmaster's request. You should have little issue using the power, as long as you don't try to use both One for All and your explosions at the same time. But on the off chance it's hard to manage, I'm going to have you train with my old mentor, Gran Torino. Whatever, old man, I'll get the hang of this oddity and make it my own. And then, if his idol picked me over him, I'll prove to that damn Deku that I was better all along. The figure of All Might looked at his successor, but for some reason, he couldn't help but feel he'd made the wrong choice. I'm putting my faith in you, Bakugo. I reserve the right to take back this power should I become unsatisfied with your use of it. You will relinquish it to me, should I deem unworthy. You'd agreed, and I expect you to give it back. Otherwise, I will make you give it back. Anarchy. Total, unadulterated mayhem. There was smoke and fire all over the city. The oxygen gets thinner. Horror screams resounding through the night. This was meant to be a city of peace, not some crappy conflict zone. Shinso couldn't help but wonder how things had gotten so out of control as he turned to face Shoto Todoroki, who was surveying the wrecked city. A few blocks away, a massive explosion tore through the city. What the hell was that? A couple of hours ago. Izuku and Shinso stood on a rooftop, looking down at Shoto and his father, the flame hero Endeavor. Okay, Hitoshi, today is the day. We have to get Todoroki on our side. He's the only shot at legitimacy that we have right now. But you cannot use your quirk except to help me get away, Shinso. After that, nothing explicitly. I want him to join us of his own volition. Izuku was now decked out in his full Venom suit, sans mask. Shinso stood with his black combat slacks and steel-toed boots on, a black turtleneck, black fitted gloves, and a Kevlar vest on. To ensure that his voice wouldn't be muffled, he carried a cut-up ski mask in his hand that only covered his hair and the upper portion of his face. Think Dread Pirate Roberts from PB or Daredevil's outfit for most of Season 1. He had a megaphone attached to his belt and a taser holster on his hip. Hitoshi dismissed Izuku's worries. He smiled wryly and said, "Relax, man. I'm not an evil genius. Just a genius." To ease their fears, Hitoshi and Izuku laughed together and said, "That's what I'm afraid of." This was the big break for them. While Shinso essentially led Endeavor off to do, well, whatever Shinso got his puppets to do for his own amusement, Izuku was going to have to persuade Shoto of their objectives. Although Venom revealed that Izuku's primary weakness was his ability to fire, they still intended to have Izuku battle Endeavor because it would have put them at a significant disadvantage, especially against the second-ranked hero. "Now, Hivemind, it's time for the show," Izuku uttered, his voice growing deeper as his mask took shape. "I really should come up with a better name," Hitoshi muttered to himself. Endeavor yelled at his son, "Shoto, pay attention. Your being seen with me is important to your image. I won't tolerate inattentiveness." Shoto was displeased that his father had utilized his power to guarantee that he would only accept internship offers from his father, a bastard, and that he would have to go with him. Shoto thought he saw something following them on the rooftops, but every time he looked up, he saw nothing. "Whatever, let's just keep going." He dismissed the emotion and carried on. His thoughts were interrupted by a somewhat familiar voice, "Excuse me, Mr. Endeavor, but I'm a huge fan. Can I get an autograph? All Might has nothing on you." The voice pointed to a man dressed entirely in black. A goth, perhaps. What's with his combat boots, though? His father interrupted him before he could say anything, speaking in that phony way he had when addressing his admirers. His father suddenly stiffened and said, "Of course you can." The boy's attitude had changed, and Todoroki became uneasy. "Follow me." The man dressed in black handed him a piece of paper before he could inquire as to what was happening. "Unwind. This is not an abduction. All we wanted to do was remove your haughty father so we could have a conversation with you." Shoto's expression turned confused, but when he looked up to confront the boy dragging his father away like a leash-wearing zombie, he discovered he was by himself on the sidewalk. A deep voice growled from behind him, "Shoto Todoroki, you're a hard man to approach." Shoto pivoted, retreating from the silhouette leaning against the structure in his rear. Wearing an all-black outfit, the figure featured a white spider symbol across his chest. His mask was wearing a manic grin. Shoto demanded, "Getting ready for a fight, who are you? Are you with the League of Villains?" The figure spoke, never taking its eyes off Shoto. "The League of who? And how the hell do you not know us? We're practically plastered on every news channel except when they talk about the hero killer. You're Venom." The figure appeared to smile more at this point, but a mask cannot make that happen. "Our partners said you were smart. But they also said you'd be harder to talk to. Frankly, we don't find it too difficult. Don't assume that you are familiar with me," Shoto sternly stated, growing uncomfortable. Why the devil does this guy use the plural form of his name? Perhaps dissociative identity disorder. "We know you hate your father. And we know you want to be a hero outside his shadow." Shoto stopped. Did that person know about it? Hivemind's guess was correct. "Enough talk. Tell me exactly what you want," growled Shoto. "Simple, really. We want you to join us in being heroes. That's it." That was about near the bottom of the list. Shoto had expected Venom to say, "Whatever the hell." "Come again?" the figure asked, laughing at his incredulity. Venom drew a deep breath and said, "Shoto, we extend to you an invitation to join the Outsiders. Despite our label as a vigilante, we don't kill. For all the comparisons to the hero killer, we are nothing like them. The only difference between us and heroes like your father is a little piece of paper that says, government approved. We believe heroes have lost their roots, in that they focus so much on making money, that saving people has become an afterthought, an added bonus." In other parts of the city, standing atop a rooftop, two figures gazed down at the city with contempt in their eyes. "Kurogiri, unleash the Nomu. As you wish, Master Tamura." The external parties. Having never heard of the team before, Shoto inquired. "You're correct, Shoto. Make no mistake about who we are. Simply because you are Endeavor's son does not mean that we want you. Not in the manner you believe." With her arms still folded, Venom calmly replied. What are you trying to say? Shoto asked, obviously intrigued by the idea. Your power is in your quirk, which makes you quick on your feet and level-headed, which is why we want you. Finally, but just as importantly, you have a sense of justice, similar to us. You said that you needed me because of my dad. Why? Both parties knew that this response would make or break the deal, so they took precautions to secure the upper hand. You joining our team gives us credibility. Our complaints about the current hero system go beyond the opinions of idle chatterers. It will spark conversation if the second greatest hero, the prodigal son, rebels against the system. It will shed light on how the ruling class makes decisions. Worst case scenario, they have to formally and legally acknowledge us as true heroes or face negative public opinion. Shoto was mesmerized by Venom's words. Here was a man with a vision and a plan to realize it. He spoke of justice in a way that vaguely reminded him of All Might. At best, we start a revolution in the field of heroes, and a return to the root of it all. Give it some thought for a few days before making a decision. If you agree, please visit the Midtown Mustafa LeBlanc coffee shop after school in precisely 2 days. We'll have a group waiting for you, but we kindly request that you disregard our typical appearance. Shoto winced at this, but continued to nod. Well, how about I ask you to proceed now? Before he gave another command, several creatures landed in the middle of the busy street. Hitoshi thought to himself as he looked at the visage of the number 2 hero. Currently, Endeavor was doing jumping jacks in the street yelling, "I'm a star," while several onlookers watched torn between confusion and amusement, including a number of pro-heroes. Oh my god, those seem just like the creatures from the USJ attack. Put me out of your mind, and get back to your regular activities. Hitoshi lost control of Endeavor and saw the creatures, causing his eyes to narrow. A final opportunity to demonstrate my superiority over All Might. Heroes. To me. And with that, Endeavor and the experts entered the battle. Venom heard a huge crash, screams, multiple small explosions, and fire shooting into the sky from a few blocks away as they turned to leave. Venom said, worry showing in his voice for his friend, "Shit, that's the way that Hivemind went." He turned to face Todoroki and continued, "Looks like we're getting a crash course in teamwork earlier than we thought." Shoto simply nodded before turning on his ice and turning to face where Venom had been moments before. He heard someone tell him to look toward the flames, and he saw the silhouette of Venom leaping into the air and swinging from building to building with dark tendrils. Shoto, try to keep up. With a pretty cool thought in his mind, Shoto looked up and then quickly walked away down the street on an ice bridge. Venom agreed that Shoto was pretty cool when he turned to look back and saw that Shoto was following him in a unique way. Izuku was not picking up when Hitoshi tried to reach him on the phone, and as he was about to call again, 2 figures descended next to him. "You took long enough, man, Venom. I assume you're talking to our friend here at this time." Curious, Hitoshi asked his friend. Most of the time, they really couldn't expect more at this point, not when things were going to hell in this city, but Venom responded coolly, "He's agreed to meet up with us to talk more, at least." Hitoshi nodded. "Venom, what are we going to do now?" Shoto asked, obviously restless. With a sigh, Venom cast a quick glance around the street, searching for anything that might work in their favor. "All right, I want you to use your power, Hivemind, to take control of anyone who hasn't left yet, for whatever reason. They must leave this place." Hitoshi and Shoto both froze at this. "Shoto, you're protecting Hivemind, and taking stalling any of these things that get past me. You intend to stick around and battle them. As soon as the creatures are down, the pros will turn on you." Hitoshi uttered harsh words, causing Venom to briefly turn and look at him. "There's nothing we can do. People will perish otherwise. In any case, let them try." Venom turned to face them, the smile on his mask expanding even more, and then he crashed into the closest Nomu, sending them flying into a nearby structure. "Izuku, you had better not pass away." "Well, you heard the boss." Hitoshi turned to Shoto, murmuring, "Mina will melt my face off if you do." He turned to address the throng of spectators, saying, "Hey guys, what would you do if I said I think Dragon Ball GT is better than Z? Let's do this." He was met with numerous infuriated voices, and all he could do was snicker and think, "Gotcha." Conversely, Shoto could only question what on earth he had gotten himself into. Venom attacked the creature's braincase, slamming it with a downward elbow, then sending it flying upwards with a backflip kick. He then smashed his fist into the creature's face, fired 2 webs at the ground below, and used his legs to grab hold of it, propelling it toward the ground with a sickening crack. The creature moaned before losing consciousness, or the will to fight, but he didn't really care, not when he had people to save. He then dragged it out and webbed it to a nearby wall, saying, "Sit there, while we go deal with the rest of the party crashers." As Venom opened his mouth to say anything more, his spider sense snapped, and he instinctively sidestepped a flaming fist. "Poison, you're under arrest," Endeavor snarled, frustrated that he hadn't knocked him out with a single blow. A bald man sneezed somewhere in the nation before returning to the hunt for egg sales. "You know, funny enough, Charizard, I'm pretty sure you can't arrest anyone, let alone someone helping you do your job." Venom replied dryly, "I'm even more sure that if you'd actually hit me, you'd be under investigation for assaulting a private citizen, since I'm only wanted for question in regards to brawl case." With a pale face, Endeavor withdrew his fist and said, "Fine, what are you here for?" "I thought I'd take a walk in the woods. Long way from the forest." Endeavor twitched, but said nothing as his eyes panned to the two surviving creatures. "Took a wrong turn in Albuquerque." "Venom, how much of these things are you aware of?" "No, I don't. That's the only thing about them besides the ability to be removed. They go by the name Nomu. The League of Villains made these human weapons. We believe they are set up to kill well-known heroes. Everybody has a few oddities. However, we are unsure of how. That's problematic. The good news is that their peculiarities don't seem to be very dangerous on their own, at least not to experts, and they don't appear to be capable of analytical thought. But when you mix them all together, that's when things get dangerous," Endeavor clarified, making sure he was thorough and audible to the experts using them. "We don't know how many have been unleashed in the city, so we need to wrap this up fast." "Yes, Vigilante, we agree. However, once they're down, you and I will speak. Just words, not phrases." Venom's only response was to hear Endeavor growl and the groans of nearby crows. As he made the civilians march in a double file line, Hivemind remarked, "Man, I feel like a dude playing an RTS." Shoto just stared, non-committal, but they kept working to get the people to safety, Hivemind controlling and provoking any more civilians they came across. A black blur slammed into it, forcing it back towards Endeavor as it went toe-to-toe with a strength Nomu was equal to, gripping hands locked with the beasts in a struggle of pure strength. He roared in anger, forcing the creature to its knees, activating his flame shroud, and burning the creature, which clicked its teeth, shoved Endeavor to the side, and raced to a pro who was not paying attention. "Dude, be aware of your surroundings. These are no easy targets." Venom addressed the hero he had rescued and then extended his hand to assist him in standing up. The expert reluctantly accepted the offer, but just as he was about to get up, a tremendous explosion tore through the city, sending them back to the ground by the shockwave. Somewhere else, Bakugo turned to face the hero killer Stain, glaring at the man who dared to call him unworthy, saying that he was merely a pretender and that fucking Izuku was a real hero. Bakugo growled, "You're really starting to piss me off, Stain. You're going to find out just how special my quirk is." He had been fortunate not to get cut and neutralized like that damn extra Iida. Even though he advised against using it just yet, he has no idea how powerful I am. "Now die, trash," Bakugo yelled as orange bioelectricity whirled wildly around his right arm, palm facing Stain. Before everything went dark, Bakugo realized something was wrong with the chain reaction as the explosion went off. He screamed as an unbearable pain shot through his arm. What on earth was that? Were the bad guys involved? One of the haphazard pros questioned nobody in particular. "Pay attention, you moron. For now, we are unable to worry about that." Endeavor's weary voice jolted them back to the present, where the final Nomu standing was engaged in combat with Venom. "Our focus is on the last of these creatures right now. HMPH. Can't let that punk upstage me," Endeavor thought to himself before launching himself towards the Nomu with a burst of flame from his shoulder blades. "Stand there or get out of the way, Venom, I care not." However, that creature is about to collapse. Exciting Nova Punch. Flames gathered around Endeavor's fist and then smashed into the Nomu's stomach, sending it hurtling through multiple buildings and landing motionless in the debris. "Oh, dear old man. You really have a right hook there. Additionally, remember that, Vigilante, we'll make amends eventually. However, today isn't that day." Endeavor nodded, then sprinted in the direction of the location where the explosion that had shook the city moments earlier had occurred. "Mom is going to freak out if I'm gone any later than this, but I need to take Hitoshi and get back home." The first thing Bakugo felt when he woke up was pain. He saw All Might standing in the corner next to him and his mother sleeping in a chair. With no hint of weakness in his voice, the symbol of peace said, "You're awake, young Bakugo. I guess I'm to blame for this." He ran a hand through his hair. "My instinct told me you were not the person to entrust this power, but the headmaster assured me that the sports festival was a worthy test of a successor. I'll be straight with you, kid. I've come to the conclusion that you ought to return one for all. You did exactly what I told you not to do, and you're too erratic. You combined your explosions with one for all. Are you even aware of what you did? In the explosion, you killed the hero killer. You left young Ida's face scarred. You blew the leg off that pro. You are currently under probation at UA until further notice." Bakugo looked over, then began to panic as he attempted to pull himself up with his right arm but discovered he was unable to feel it. "Where is it located?" All Might was unable to bear to look at Bakugo because of the fear that was evident in his expression. Furiously, Bakugo cried out, "Where the fuck is my arm? How could you treat me like this?" He pulled out a few hairs and hurled them in All Might's face as he started to thrash around in bed. "Take back your fucking quirk." Izuku was in LeBlanc, awaiting the arrival of the others in the group. With nothing better to do, he took a moment to look around the store. The store itself was rather empty, as was generally the case. He couldn't recall ever seeing it extremely packed, aside from a handful of regulars like Mina and a few others. Inanely, he pondered how Sojiro continued to operate. Speaking of Sojiro, Izuku was the only person in the store at the moment because he would occasionally dash to his house to inquire about something. He refocused his thoughts on the outsider's initial encounter with a potential member. Even though they had developed a slight bond under duress, he wasn't entirely sure whether Shoto would show up. He was so engrossed in his thoughts that he spazzed out and fell beneath the table when someone blew in his left ear. Then he heard Mina kneel to check on him, and he heard her familiar cackling. She attempted to talk between snorts of laughter. Mina chuckled softly, "I'm sorry Izuku, I couldn't help it. I waved my hand in front of you 4 times, and said your name at least 8. So I decided to take drastic measures. Child, she has you covered. Kind of jealous that she forced you to spill. Perhaps I ought to try to screw you too. Please refrain from. Already, she's giving me a heart attack." Her expression darkened, as though recalling something unpleasant. "You're here early, Mina." "Izuku, there's something you should know. It's about Bakugo, and something he did," she said while fidgeting. A pause. "Did he touch you?" Izuku stumbled and bit his lip tensely. "You unwillingly, of course," she said, averting her eyes from the camera. With a blink, Mina said, obviously not expecting him to be so insecure, but still wanting to shield her. "Because I'll web him to a wall somewhere if you want." She was moved by it and felt compelled to reaffirm their bond. Mina effectively interrupted him, saying, "Don't get me wrong, I know you can take care of yourself. I just MMPH. After all, it's kind of hard to talk when a cute girl is putting her lips to yours." He stopped freaking out and she started to slowly pull away. "Izuku, it's nothing like that. Though it's adorable that my boyfriend is so protective of me." "BB boyfriend," Izuku was exclaiming in shock. "Alternatively, a stroke. That's exactly what this is." He had suffered a stroke, and this was a massive hallucination brought on by a brain bleed. She gave him a nose flip. "Bad Izuku, no mutters." She gave him a playful glare and went on. She switches to a very arrogant and pompous British accent, saying, "Yes, I said boyfriend. Because we've been dating for weeks, and I consider you such. The alien queen graciously bestows upon you the title of boyfriend most righteous, +8. She made an elaborate gesture with a butter knife, knighting you." Izuku gave her a gentle smile in response, which caused her cheeks to turn lilac. "Unless you're dating some other cute girl from outer space," she whispered conspiratorially as she leaned in. Izuku shook his head and laughed softly at this. He took her hand in his and they sat down in their booth. No, I think Mina Ishido is the only alien queen for me. Now what's this about Bakugo? It's kind of a long story. So broad stroke it, I bet you'd like if I stroked something. Amazing. Hello, Mina. Ha, you're too easy to mess with. No need to be such a prude, Izu. Anyway, so yeah, Bakugo fought the hero killer with another of our classmates. Things didn't go so well for them though. What do you mean? Bakugo blew his arm off in the fight. He refused to say how. He's always been quiet at least until someone talks about Venom or talks too loudly, but now he's broody. Izuku was struck by the blow. Although he didn't despise Bakugo, he didn't like the man he had become. At the very least, he respected Bakugo then, but Venom had made him more aware of his actions. Though it didn't seem likely, he had always hoped that they would one day become friends again. He swallowed his other queries, attempting to gain control of the circumstances instead. What happened to your other classmate? Iida got nerve damage in his arm, and Bakugo burnt his fact, though not intentionally. He has burn marks over his left eye that run to his hairline. He's lucky he didn't lose any vision. We don't know details though. Apparently, the cops got involved and it's super hush-hush. Supposedly the hero killer died in that fight, but there's no word on who killed him. Izuku sat in disbelief. It goes without saying that if the matter was kept secret, Bakugo or this Iida guy was the one who killed the hero killer. What's Iida's quirk? Huh, that's what you're curious about, out of everything I said. She gave him a doubtful look but said, I promise it's a relevant question, Mina. It's called engine. He's actually related to Ingenium. Lets him run fast. Then that settles it. Settles what? Bakugo killed the hero killer. They wouldn't try to keep details under wraps that badly unless it would paint Ua in a bad light. My guess as to what happened. Iida went looking for revenge, since Ingenium was the hero killer's most recent victim. They're brothers, so that makes sense. I don't exactly know why Bakugo was there though. Is he friends with Iida? Not at all. Iida detests Bakugo because he's unruly and crass. Maybe he just stumbled across them then. So Bakugo sees what's happening, and then a fight ensues. Flash forward to the end, and Bakugo is desperate. He creates an explosion larger than he can handle, and blows his arm, Stain, and the surround area to bits in the process. Having never truly witnessed Izuku's analysis in action, Mina gazed at him in wonder. Wow, Izuku, are you related to Detective Conan? No, I don't think I'm that good. The welcome chime at the store dinged before Mina could say anything else, and they looked up. They watched Hitoshi enter the room accompanied by Shoto Todoroki. Each of them had on their official Ua uniform. With a nod of greeting, they slid into the booth across from each other. Shoto asked, a little surprised to see the pink girl sitting so close to a boy he didn't recognize, Ashido. What are you doing here? Oh, hey Shoto, I'm glad you could join us. Mina exclaimed, glad that her classmate had made an appearance. Us. Todoroki understood. He turned to face the new boy. You're Venom? Shoto asked, giving him a sidelong glance that suggested some skepticism. I imagined you'd be more intimidating outside the suit. Ha, I always tell you that I give you a nice appearance. Izuku laughed nervously at Shoto, ignoring his partner's slightly conceited self-preening. Mina flicked his ear at him, saying, yeah, I can imagine so. I don't look like much, do I? OW, what was that for? Now, freckles. None of that, I happen to think you look cute and scrumptious cinnamon roll. Izuku, blushing from her brazen flirtation, buried his face in his hands. After giving a snort, Hitoshi shook his head. Man, let's focus back on the reason we're here, and less on embarrassing Izuku. He grumbled. Izuku grinned at his friend's attempt to save him. Izuku's sweat dropped. Besides, Mina, there will be plenty of time for that later. Not. Shoto nodded, using the opportunity to express his worries. Izuku sighed at hearing this, knowing he would have to be honest with himself in order to win Shoto over. Let's say I do agree to your little crusade, Izuku. Shoto said bluntly, what exactly stops us from doing whatever we want? The media and authorities have a point about you. You don't answer to anyone but yourself. Shoto sat up more straight and fixed his intense gaze on Izuku. Let me tell you a story, Shoto. It's about a boy who didn't have a quirk, yet wanted to be a hero more than anything else in the world. Izuku Midoriya paused, obviously dealing with his own painful memories. Izuku Midoriya and his friend Katsuki Bakugo wanted to be heroes so badly. They wanted to be just like All Might. That was great until they turned 6. Katsuki got a really powerful quirk. Izuku didn't. Reassuringly, Mina squeezed his hand. He exhaled and continued. In fact, the longer that Izuku didn't develop a quirk, the angrier and crueler Katsuki became. Eventually, Katsuki stopped treating Izuku like a friend, and instead started using him as a punching bag. Katsuki even used his quirk on Izuku occasionally. But through all that, Izuku never stopped considering Katsuki his friend, truly believing they could one day be friends again if he could just get a quirk. Shoto was quietly considering what he'd been told so much. He guessed that the Bakugo was the same one he knew, and his guess was confirmed by Mina's slight nod. The group's eyes widened at this. However, as I'm sure you can probably guess, Izuku never manifested a quirk. At least, not on his own. Was Izuku's peculiarity not his own? Kid, do you really think it's a good idea to tell them everything about me? I can't teach them the way you could, and we have to do it eventually. We'll eventually have to simulate what would happen if they were expelled from UA. They're taking a big chance on this. We must treat them fairly. Alright, child, I agree with your choice. Just keep Izuku in mind. Alright, you're not alone anymore. Izuku wiped away a few tears that had started to well up in her eyes. I'm grateful, partner. Anytime, young one. They all leaned in at this point, mesmerized by what they were hearing, as Izuku continued, looking back up at his group and explaining, through a series of events. Izuku obtained power after bonding with a relic from the hero Spider-Man. Before glancing at them all, Izuku's eyes began to bleed a little black at this point. We bonded with a creature called a symbiote. Mina, horrified by his abrupt transformation, grabbed him by the shoulders and exclaimed, "What the hell? Izuku, are you okay?" Mina, the kid let me commandeer his vocal cords in order to address you. While Venom is Izuku's hero name, it's also the name of this symbiote. Through our time with the hero Spider-Man, we gained an imprint of his powers, enhancing them, and eventually retaining them within our DNA. Anyone we bonded with could use these powers. Izuku's eyes returned to their normal color. He gave a blink. I'll never get used to that. His pals gave him a crazy look. Shoto was staring at him intently now, something unreadable flashing in his eyes. He disregarded this and continued, saying, "So yeah, I have a quirk, but it's not truly mine. At least, it wasn't. As I used Venom's power more and more, I noticed a sort of bleed effect over time. I was faster than before, and I had better reflexes. I'm still much faster in the suit, but who can say if the bleed will continue?" He then turned to Todoroki. "Shoto, I noticed you don't use your dad's quirk. I don't know if that's related to your scar, but I can relate to identity issues with your power. After all, I have a 300-year-old creature in my head constantly comparing me to America's greatest hero in history, and every time I use my powers, I'm reminded even further that my power isn't quite my own. But at the end of the day, your power is yours now. Your father may have given you half of your quirk, but he can't tell you how to use it. You can either ignore it, and limit yourself, or you can make it your own, and become a hero that is damn near unstoppable." At realizing how he sounded, Izuku frantically waved his hands in front of himself. I'm not trying to telling you how to use your powers. I just wanted you to know I get where you're coming from. Shoto considered all he had just heard. From Izuku's personal battle with his quirk to his past. Though he wasn't sure if he could just start using his father's full quirk so quickly, he was determined to give it a shot. And perhaps it was time to pay his mother a visit. In another room, Katsuki Bakugo was by himself in his living room finishing homework. Without his dominant arm, it was painful. The teacher attempted to move him out, but he had refused. In one way or another, he would be a hero. He could have demonstrated with both arms that the other students in his foolish class were just extra weight. Even without an arm, he would prove to them that he was the best. Anger shot through him as he tried to write the solution to the problem on the paper. Katsuki clenched his teeth, not used to struggling to write his homework assignments. He detested the sensation of not being able to exercise control. God, All Might and his eccentricity. Deku as well. Deku would not have been desperate enough to accept All Might's quirk in the first place if he had never defeated him. I don't need his stupid power. I'm the best, damn it. And I'll prove it, no matter what. As they say, pride comes before a fall, and Katsuki still had a ways to go before falling. Hitoshi, Izuku, and Mina were all staring expectantly at Shoto. This was the crucial moment, where he might have joined them. They sat there, breathing heavily, the tension at the table growing with every passing moment. I'll do it, and with that, the tense atmosphere vanished. Hitoshi simply took a sip of his tea, Mina laughed shyly, and Izuku exhaled a sigh of relief. However, I do think we should discuss your friend at a later date, Izuku. That is my condition. It's not that I think it's a threat, I just would like to have a better grasp over who I'm working with. I know Izuku, But I need to know Venom as well. Izuku gave a nod. These were reasonable demands. You know me, kid, anyway. I'll be the first to sing my own praises, year-round. Once more, Izuku made an effort to ignore his adoring friend's narcissistic digressions. Mina asked inquisitively, he talks to you in your head, doesn't he? Startled, Izuku turned to face her. Oh come on, Izuku. I may not be the most book-smart girl around, but I'm very people-smart. Your eyes occasionally glaze over for a few seconds, and then you sort of jolt like you were somewhere else. The others gave him a deadpan look and said, yeah, he talks to me. He sort of alternates between narcissism and being helpful. Is talking about one's own awesomeness too much for a non-physical entity to qualify as a narcissist? Mina gave herself a sharp blow to the forehead. The others gave her a questioning glance. Hitoshi sighed, Shoto just looked perplexed, and Izuku just scratched his cheek. Duh, we have to give Shoto a cool nickname. Hitoshi exclaimed. Hitoshi nodded and said, I think we should address some more pressing concerns. I agree. The Hosu incident showed me that while my quirk is good for handling humans, I can't fight the Nomu. This, more than anything else, affirms that we need two things before we can truly make our appearance to the world: a gearmaker and funding. I have a friend I can get involved, and I can start on that tomorrow as I'm sort of meeting her after school tomorrow anyway. Hitoshi concluded with a slight blush on his normally blank face. Mina teased in a sing-song voice, ooh, Hitoshi's got a girlfriend. Hitoshi remained silent in the face of Mina's antics, saying, whatever. Just be ready to make a sales pitch in 2 days. She gave a pout, but remained silent. They heard Shoto say, I actually have a potential source of funding. This caught their interest. Mina blinked at this. It's nothing concrete, but I may know someone who's willing to help. I'll have to talk to them tomorrow. She began, are you talking about, but was interrupted. They all stretched and started to leave the booth. Yes, but I need to speak with her before I say anything else. I make no promises she'd be interested. Izuku felt proud as he gazed at each of them. The others nodded and made their way out. So we agree. We meet up in 2 days to try to sell the idea of the outsiders to a benefactor and a gear outfitter. One of them asked. Hitoshi and Shoto said goodbye with a wave as they went outside. It was then that Izuku turned scarlet as Mina grabbed hold of his arm. Come on Izuku, I want to get a burger. Izuku, fully clothed in venom, crouched on a rooftop, observing his targets. They were discussing whatever it is that people who sell drugs talk about. He didn't really care and didn't have the foggiest idea. They were obviously waiting for something as they sat at Mustafa City's docks. The gate leading back to the main road was not far from their truck. Although drug running was not as common as it once was, those who continued to operate were dangerous people. Even though he had heard rumors of Yakuza engaging in dubious activities, he had not yet discovered anything solid. Mostly just the occasional whisper. However, the group he was currently pursuing was equally adept at hiding their footprints. They were both new and careless. But their leader was shrewd, at least from what he'd spoken to a few thugs. And worse, they had a highly useful quirk that was essential to their operations. Venom and Izuku concurred that now was the ideal time to win over more people to their cause. Not because they had no support, but just because they weren't ready, is why they didn't tell the others. Izuku would be damned if he let them leave before he had at least enough venom to make lesson tapes, and preferably after they had acquired supplies for the others. Izuku was startled out of his reverie when one of the dealers' phones rang, forcing him to return his attention to the thugs. The dealer looked like he was talking to his boss, judging by the rapidly fading color on his face. He held the phone in front of him and appeared anxious. Then there was a flash, and a gaunt man in a fancy suit appeared out of nowhere, clearly not in a good mood. Reaching down to touch the dealer's shoulder, the gaunt man glanced at the phone lying on the floor. After another flash, they vanished out of nowhere. The other two dealers exchanged a quick glance and shrugged before making their way back to the truck they had left at the gate. Izuku reasoned that he would pursue them in order to obtain information about the remaining aspects of the operation. Even though they made an effort to drive as stealthily as possible, Izuku continued to follow them closely. You ought to think about joining us in using some technology. For example, trackers would lessen the urgency of this. You may even want to think about wearing night vision lenses underneath the mask. Not to mention that everybody adores toys. That's not something I think I could make, but maybe we should discuss it with Hitoshi's friend. Izuku considered his partner again and saw the benefits of adding a few tools. But first, he would need to make a list of the specifications he desired. Izuku muttered, now consciously considering all the fun little goodies he could request. Something to do after this, I guess. Naturally, for the sake of justice. He sensed his partner's perplexity as he leapt in a zigzag formation between buildings. I have never been able to understand that. Even though these buildings aren't as large as those in New York, you could still try web-sling to move around. Rather, you use only the web lines from quick zip lines to vault across the street and jump from building to building. For what reason is that the case? This is a better method of exercising, and wearing the suit doesn't seem to hurt my endurance. I combine my hero work with real endurance training in this way. Besides, Venom, I might be like Peter, but I'm not him. When I fight, I mostly use my arms, but I doubt my strength compares to his. If I used my swinging too much, I would get tired, which could come back to haunt me. Izuku told his companion, yes, we haven't encountered anyone challenging outside of the Nomu, but it's better to err on the side of caution. Izuku then continued to follow the car while using his special momentum propulsion. He vaulted over several rooftops, beneath a few clotheslines, and even between a radio tower's support beams. The truck eventually pulled up to an old-looking amusement park. Probably this is the location, Izuku whispered. Most likely, young one. Furthermore, it screams evil hideout. $10 indicates that they are up to no good in the Hall of Mirrors. Come on, that can't be true at all. It's just too clear. Izuku's phone started to buzz, signaling that someone was trying to reach him, before he could take action. He looked down and Mina was there. He tapped the earbud in his left ear and slid the answer button. Izuku said, feeling a little awkward now that he was talking to his girlfriend. Hello. Mina's always happy voice called out, Izuku you. Hi, what you doing? He asked in a playful manner, do you want our alibi, or what we're actually doing? She responded teasingly, enjoying their banter, I dunno. You do come up with some interesting ones. And just saying, it's still super weird to hear you refer to yourself in the plural sense. We apologize, but it's a side effect of our powers. He could almost picture her waving her hand and saying, I know. Anyway, so what's my dashing little vigilante boyfriend up to currently? Well, we just finished tailing some new element in downtown Mustafa. We are planning to shut down their operation tonight, so we can meet up without time constraints with the group tomorrow. He heard Mina sigh as she spoke on the phone. She expressed concern for Izuku, saying, Izuku, I know the work you do as Venom is important. But don't forget to take care of Izuku, okay? Her words struck a chord with him because he had never known anyone to feel that way about him. It was pleasant. We will, Mina, we promise, okay. Just before she hung up, she said, thank you. I'll let you go save the day, okay. Hugs. He found her little action endearing and quirky, and he really enjoyed it. Hugs, Mina, we'll call you after, okay? So you'll know we're okay. They ended the call with Izuku sliding his phone back into his suit pouch and saying, okay. Go get Tiger. Partner, it's time to go to work. You're absolutely correct, let's take a sock to it. Izuku landed on a lamppost, which afforded him a good view of the local thugs. He had made the decision to remain covert for as long as possible. He calmly moved into position after identifying the thugs who were the easiest to get to. The first involved taking a rather unhygienic leak against a building wall. There was a tap on his shoulder as he was wrapping up his business. When he turned around, a fist collided with his face, causing him to fall into a blissful unconsciousness. Until there was just one remaining guard, the remaining guards outside proceeded largely in the same manner. Izuku launched a web at him while he was observing him from a rooftop, pulling him toward the edge. Venom grinned maniacally, flashing its even sharper teeth. Hey, got some questions? See, we were in the neighborhood, and looking for directions to the pizza parlor, a cell phone retailer, and your boss's hideout. Think you can help us out? The thug appeared almost ready to urinate on himself. Who knows if it was from the psychotic-looking guy in black or from being held out from a 3-story building by one arm. Before he could scream, Venom swiftly covered his mouth with her hand. Oh my god. The thug enthusiastically nodded at this. Venom said, waving a finger with claws. No shouting. Don't want to spoil the surprise now, do we? Good, we are in agreement. Now, our directions please. Venom twitched at this. He's in the Hall of Mirrors in the back of the park. Do you hear the phone ringing, kid? Because I made the call. Ah, I detest it when you're correct. Izuku let out a mental sigh and returned his attention to the criminal at hand. The thug asked, looking very perplexed, and our pizza parlor is where? But Venom caught him off guard and dropped him safely onto the roof. You won't ever doubt my incredible wisdom again, I promise. Venom, yes, my dearest partner. Please stop talking. Perched atop the Hall of Mirrors beams, Venom cast his eyes over the myriad of crooks who were frantically setting up drug crates. His gaze panned around the building until it settled on the man he had noticed at the docks. Although teleportation is undoubtedly his quirk, what are his limitations? Before Izuku could finish thinking, a thug ran up to the well-dressed man and whispered something in his ear. The boss then displayed an angry expression. He then shoved the underling and entered the actual Hall of Mirrors, saying, "Listen up, you fools. Someone is here." Since they didn't flashily announce themselves, that means it's either that Pro Eraserhead or the vigilante Venom. Spread out, and find M. After the 8 thugs gathered below Venom, he made the decision to move quickly. He fell onto one of them, hitting his head hard on the surface. "Hi," Venom said with a simple smile that startled the gang of thugs. "Oh fuck guys, he's gonna eat us." Venom tilted his head, perplexed. What? All hell broke loose when a thug tried to slug him with a crowbar out of fear. With his screams resonating throughout the building, Venom grabbed the crowbar thug and threw him against a wall. He then shot a web at the pistol-wielding thug and zipped him to a rafter beam. He landed back down before his spider sense activated, and he was able to avert a butterfly knife stab by quickly turning his head to the side. They moaned at his trite commentary, then the remaining 6 all rushed him at once and attempted to swarm him. You know guys, you should definitely work on your greeting technique. It's very rude to start with sharp objects. Should save that for when you're cooking dinner. Wait, how do you guys feel about the legendary Emerald Agassi? He kicked one of the thugs in the other after ducking beneath his legs. After uppercutting the third, he performed a flip kick backwards and a midair combo, changing into a scissor kick that caught the opponent in the temple and sent him flying into a drug crate into a state of blissful consciousness. Ah, they're so cute when they're sleeping. And you know, the rest of you could do the smart thing and give up. Venom responded with kindness. The others exchanged a quick look before, unexpectedly, nodding and running away. Huh, can't believe that actually worked. With lavish-looking shades on his face and hands at his sides, the boss waltzed up to Venom and said, "And here I thought I would get to hear more of your riveting dialogue." Venom blinked and said, "Dude, who the hell wears sunglasses at night? Especially in this dark-ass warehouse." Suddenly, the boss was standing in front of him, gently tapping his shoulder. "I do, for one. Call it trend-setting, kid. And now, I'm about to show you a magic trick. In the Hall of Mirrors." Seriously, all of a sudden, Venom was dropped into the depths of the walls of mirrors, thinking, oh yes. I'm about to make an asshole disappear. You see kid, my quirk is pretty useful. Oh great, a cliché villain speech. And here I thought I could go my career without hearing one. You've got a pretty smart mouth for someone so stupid. After all, you'd have to be, to stroll into my operation without a plan. Venom's sense snapped, and he spun to the side, kicking the man in the head before he vanished once more. Oh, I had a plan. It just lacked details. Man, you don't know who I am, do you? I'm assuming you mean besides as the guy the first just kicked in the temple. Goddammit brat, shut up for just a damn second. My name is Shift. Venom reluctantly said, well, that's a pretty badass name, I'll give you that. Another tug at his spider sense, and Venom rolled to the side, shooting webs at the guy and pinning him to a wall for a few seconds before he vanished again. Why, thanks kid, the only problem is everyone only hears it once. So it hasn't caught on. He didn't get a response before getting punched once more. Wait, I get it. Shift, because you shift positions. Alright, this is getting very bothersome. There's obviously a limit to his power, but what exactly is it? Do you think that thug at the docks answered his phone on a video call, symbiote? Perhaps. If so, this guy can only teleport to places he can see. That's the largest limitation, though there may be others. Then, all we need to do is take away his vision. Venom peered around and noticed a light fuse box above the mirrors in the catwalk. After zooming up there, he punched the fuse box, causing the building to go completely dark. Panicked, Shift called out into the dark, So that's your big plan. So what if you figured out my quirk's weakness? If I can't see you, you can't see me. Silently, Venom zeroed in on the source of the sound, locating Shift with his enhanced sense of hearing. Shift had already lost all composure, saying, "Fight me like a man, you coward." Venom took a few steps back and shot some webbing into Shift's face to obstruct his view. After that, he launched them into the air and put them in a body lock. As gravity pulled them downward, they descended, and Venom made sure to shift his head on the ground before passing out. He was lifted by Venom and then forcefully placed onto his shoulder. "Let's get him to the cops so they can officially shut this guy down." Venom had left Shift a note describing his peculiarity and the locations of his warehouse and operations. After that, he left for home, making the call to Mina that he had promised to make, and falling asleep almost immediately after getting into bed. School had flown by the next day, and before he knew it, Izuku was waiting for the others in LeBlanc. It was on this day that he persuaded Shoto's friend to be their supporter and the Hatsume girl to be their tech creator. When the door chimed, his friends emerged. Mina hurried over to him right away and embraced him, putting her strong body against him. He blushed red, but he gave her a hug in return. Hitoshi and Shoto merely gave him a nod of greeting. Her face lit up with a broad smile. "Hey, baby. Guess what? They agreed to talk to you." She then made Izuku's day happier. Two girls coughed, calling Izuku's attention to themselves. Really? That's great." Hatsume was a girl wearing pink dreadlocks, cargo pants, and a tank top. Welder's goggles were also worn by her. The other girl had rather aristocratic features and was dressed rather primly. She wore her black hair in an untidy ponytail, with one bang dangling over the side of her face. You must be Ms. Hatsume and Shoto's friend, right?" the girl asked, gesturing with hesitation as she nodded. They then moved back to their regular table in the back, with Hitoshi sitting to Izuku's right, closest to the aisle, and Mina nestled into his left. "Well, let's sit down and talk, okay?" Mina said. Hatsume sat across from Hitoshi as the unidentified girl, Shoto, and Hatsume moved across them. Izuku started to say something, but the girl from the aristocracy interrupted. Izuku paused, thinking to himself before answering, "Before you begin, I want to clear some things up. To be completely transparent, you are the vigilante known as Venom, correct? Should I tell them? Sincerely, I need their trust, and I doubt they would be here otherwise." Izuku said directly, "Yes, I'll be upfront. I'm Venom, but I'm not the villain the media would have you believe I am." He then nodded, letting her continue. "I want to get an idea for you as a person, and what you hope to accomplish," Momo said, clearing her throat before continuing. "I have questions. I know nothing of you, beyond your reporting on the news. Before I commit to any aid, which will be purely financial, and occasionally use of my quirk." Izuku's eyes narrowed at this, and he answered. She nodded to him, acknowledging his points. "How do I know you won't turn me in? I haven't hurt anyone. Well, besides criminals. And I don't even know your name." "Very well. Trust must be established first then. I am Momo Yaoyorozu. My quirk is creation, but I have to have a clear grasp of the composition of anything I make. My name is Izuku Midoriya. My quirk is arachnid, for the sake of simplicity. I am also the vigilante known as Venom. Now go ahead and ask your questions. I wish to know why you attacked Bakugo 3 months ago, and why you refused to get a hero's license. That's personal. However, I will say I didn't attack him. He agreed to fight me. I guess the cops just took his statement the wrong way, or something got lost in translation." Izuku said with a sigh. "As for why I don't get a license, it's simple. I can't. I'm technically wanted for acts of vigilantism, which would disbar me from applying traditionally. However, that's why I put together this group, in hopes of attaining legitimacy through righteous actions." Momo nodded in agreement. It was reasonable to ask, since she had no way of knowing the real story behind his methods. "I understand. One more question. Are you different from the hero killer in methodology?" "Yes, I am. I have not, and will never kill. I also don't fight heroes unless I have to, and even then, I typically just web them to a wall for a few minutes until I escape. As for what I want to do with this group, I want to show that heroes don't need to pay to do good. And that they don't need a prestigious pedigree and schooling to be excellent heroes. I want to show that anyone can be a hero with enough effort." This response pleased Momo, as Shoto observed. Like him, she appeared enthralled with his discourse on justice and the definition of a real hero. Everyone's jaws dropped, thinking something along the lines of, small. At this point, very well, I accept your request for funding. Now, keep in mind, I can only provide a small amount of funds, which will come from my own allowance. My parents do not give me frivolous amounts of money, providing only a small amount of 1,000,000 yen a month. That said, I would be happy to assist your crusade in any way I can. So you may count on 500,000 yen of my allowance a month for support. I cannot join you in the field however, as I cannot afford to be recognized. I am truly sorry for that. Izuku nodded, happy to help if she could. He then turned to face Hatsume, who had something tinkling in her lap. Hitoshi cleared his throat and said, May, now's your turn. She gave a small start, then turned to face Izuku. Izuku and Mina's eyes widened at this. So you're Venom. Hitoshi here tells me you want me to make you some of my babies. How brazen this girl was. Hitoshi cleared his throat, then spoke up. May half-heartedly glared at Hitoshi, upset that he had called her pride and joy nothing more than mere gadgets. When May says babies, she means her gadgets. By the end, she was yelling, how dare you? My babies are much more than mere gadgets. They are works of art, making the other people start to perspire at her antics. Izuku coughed and then attempted to steer the conversation back on course, saying, right. Yes, May, my team has strong members, but we need gear. I don't need much, due to how my quirk works, but my actions last night convinced me I could use a few helpful tools. Why should I? I don't really care that you're a vigilante or anything. But helping you could be problematic for me. Well, if you're outfitting us, we could field test your prototypes for you. Plus, you get practice for custom orders from pros when you get signed by a gear company, assuming you don't just make your own. May nodded at his reasoning, but remained unsure. I don't know. I don't know that I can trust you with my babies. They're very important to me. With a sigh, Hitoshi realized what he had to do. Her eyes widened at this, and she leaned over the table, her face getting close to Hitoshi's. You know, May, if you help us out, I'll help with your countermeasure project that neutralizes my quirk. Given the girl he developed a crush on's close proximity, Hitoshi was blushing slightly. Do you mean it, Hitoshi? Before I was worried you wouldn't want to. May excitedly nodded her head and rubbed her hands together. Why yeah, sure, as long as you help us, I'll give you a hand. Izuku thought for a moment about the consequences of this possibly Faustian deal as she laughed a bit evilly. Excellent. This is perfect. Ahahaha. May started talking again before anyone could say anything concerning this. So what do you want exactly? Izuku glanced at Hitoshi, Shoto, and Mina. Leaning forward, he produced the list they had generated during their previous day's group chat. Well, I need to add my ideas to the list, but those are probably fairly simple. For Shoto, we need a fireproof bodysuit and mask that help with temperature regulation, so he isn't recognized before he formally recognizes us. For Mina, she had the idea of arm gauntlets that she can pump acid into for later use, to reduce the strain of her quirk on her pores. She also wanted an airtight bodysuit with a built-in half mask, with protective chest plates and sci-fi looking helmet. Hitoshi wanted something a little more protective than his vest, and taser gloves. He also wanted some boots that would up his mobility as well as some infrared goggles, for rescue ops. As for myself, I wanted some night vision lenses with tactical displays that I can link to my phone and headset. And maybe some tracker darts. The type of person who was impressed. I thought you'd need something challenging. Don't get me wrong, I'll still make it. But I reserve the right to make babies for you guys to field test later. They all looked at each other and nodded. Izuku, acting as the spokesperson, said, we agree. So how long would this take you, May? May tapped her finger on her chin and said, well, I don't know, it could take me a while. I guess I could be finished by tomorrow. Her mind was already racing. Aside from Hitoshi, who appeared somewhat taken aback at this, May was obviously unaccustomed to such merciless effectiveness. Izuku responded with a rather composed, tomorrow. More or less. Yours, though, I can have finished by tonight. You just want face-fitting lenses, right? Yeah, more or less. Izuku and Hitoshi nodded at this, and Mina looked at her watch. Okay, I'll start when I get home. I'll give them to Hitoshi so he can give them to you when they're done. She looked hesitant and said, guys, it's like 7 p.m. We should probably head home for the evening. It was obvious that she didn't want to go home and study. Izuku smiled softly and said, "So that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about anyway. Thanks for coming guys, and welcome to the outsiders." While the others went their separate ways, Mina stayed glued to him. She came to a halt and started adjusting her skirt. Izuku turned to face her, curious that she had stopped. Hey, Izuku," she said, sounding remarkably anxious. With a voice that expressed concern, he asked, "Yes, Mina. What's wrong?" and extended his hand to meet hers. She gave me a little flush, then shook her head. She stopped, took a breath, then said, I wanted to ask you two things. My parents wanted to have a family meet-up, with both our families. They want to do it sometime after my finals. Is that okay? I don't want to pressure you or anything, you know." Izuku was momentarily perplexed before he burst out laughing. With a sheepish expression, she said, "That's what you're worried about. Of course I'd agree to it. You're my girlfriend, and meeting your family is an important part of my job as such, isn't it?" Then she nodded. "What's the other request?" Again, Izuku was touched and flattered that spending time with him meant that much. Can we go out on another date? Like a dinner and a movie? I just want to spend some time along together. It feels like it's been a while, and things are about to get super busy." He pulled away from her and hugged her tenderly. Realizing how forward he'd been, he blushed. He spoke a little sadly, feeling as though he had somehow neglected Mina. Sorry about that. We can, Mina. I'm sorry we haven't done something in a while. I guess I've been a bad boyfriend, huh?" he said. At this, Mina shook her head. "No, that's not what I meant. You haven't been a bad boyfriend at all, babe. I guess I just wanted to pretend like we were normal teenagers again before things got busy." His lips were puckered with a smile. She leapt with joy and said, "Of course, Mina. I'd love to." She then gave him a few gentle kisses before they started walking hand in hand to her train station, lights twinkling in the darkness. Venom was starting to lose patience. He found himself fighting Nomu once more. The media outlets that usually cover such events had taken notice of the disturbance that the fighting had caused. Punching out another Nomu, Venom paused and muttered to no one in particular, "This is half our damn job. We wanted to be a hero, vigilante. We didn't realize that included fighting B-movie quirk Frankensteins." A few of the local police were staring on incredulously as the vigilante continued to fight while the muttering went on. Well, Frankenstein's monster, since was a scientist. A common misconception, really. And that's another thing. How many of these damn things do they plan on making? And how has this not sparked a nationwide panic? After hearing him rant, two officers exchanged disbelieving looks. One of them said to the other, "Dude, is he muttering to himself? How long will this last? Especially when they're fighting and doing those acrobatic moves?" The other person asked, clearly not knowing what they were seeing either. Venom said sarcastically as he casually threw a Nomu into a car. "It just seems like the League of Villains' default solution to any situation that arises is, let's throw a bunch of freaky monsters the problem. That's clearly the most logical thing to do. It just annoys us is all. Because all their evil plans seem to hinge on these damn things." Venom glanced around, realizing that All Might had vanished from view at some point during his contemplation. Just as he was going to question the police about it, his spider sense went crazy. A literal mass of muscle tissue passed where his head had been moments before, and he leaned to the side just in time. Venom said sardonically, irritatedly looking at Muscular, "Oh, you're awake. Joy, how was your nap, buddy? Have any nice dreams?" Muscular just gave a psychotic smile, looking around, appearing to get more and more excited by Venom's work. "I know you. You're that Venom guy. I've wanted to kill you for a while." Venom said in mock admiration, "Oh, Mr. Muscles, you make us feel like the prettiest girl at the ball." Before giving Muscular a sucker punch to the face that sent him skidding back a few inches. With a hint of lust in his voice, Muscular remarked, "Nice love tap. But it's gonna take way more to stop me." Izuku shot a tendril at the damaged wall behind Muscular and yanked it down onto the beefy villain, saying, "Oh, we know. That was just to say, hello. And this is how we say, goodbye." The wall appeared to crumble pitifully around him. "You understand that won't be able to permanently end him, right?" "Of course. Still, it sounded really good. You've got me covered, kid." After that, Venom studied the debris pile while waiting for Muscular to come out. The pile started to move, and then a massive, bored-looking blob of Muscular stood up. Seriously, is that all? You're starting to bore me as much as those two kids a few weeks ago. Venom tensed up at this, narrowing his eyes at Muscular. Care to repeat what you just said, CrossFit? After laughing, Muscular smiled at Venom. You should have been there, man. This 6-year-old tried to fight me because I killed his parents. So I did the merciful thing and reunited them, but then this pink bitch tried to fight me too. So I crushed one of her horns. Would have crushed some limbs too, but some scarred prick stole her away and froze me in the process. Talk about a cold shoulder. The more Muscular talked, the more Venom's body with rage. Then after she got away, I just roamed around, toying with the campers. This kangaroo kid put up a decent fight, so I snapped his tail. That was fun, but then this short purple kid stuck himself to my fist. So then I just punched a tree until he came off. Should heard his screams. They were delightful. For a moment, Venom remained motionless and silent. Izuku had finally lost control of his rage before giving in to the hostility the suit evoked. Muscular's face before he launched himself at the villain was all that Izuku saw before everything went black and his eyes narrowed and his form shook. They kept exchanging blows until Muscular beat him out with one of his enormous arms. With his excitement at an all-time high, Muscular cried out, "Now this is a fight. Come on then, show me what you've got," before sprinting to strike Venom once more. Venom disregarded his spider sense, his anger obscuring his awareness of it, and sprinted to meet Muscular's charge. Venom leapt over an enormous fist and kicked Muscular in the head. Because of his daze, Venom was able to seize his arm and propel him into a moving vehicle. Muscular was hardly alarmed by this, as he lunged towards Venom and smashed a fist into his face. He was startled out of his reverie and able to concentrate once more on the current task. With barely control over his righteous rage, Venom demanded, "Where are Katsuki Bakugo and the other kidnapping victims?" Muscular was perplexed by the question. "Bakugo? Who the hell is Bakugo? I'm just here to kill things." He stopped. "When they let me, luckily for me, they aren't here, so I can do whatever the hell I want. As for the kidnapping victims, why the hell would you care? You're a vigilante. Our reasons do not concern you, villain. Now, where is Bakugo?" That completely sidetracked Venom's train of thought. "I still don't know who you're talking about, but the League was very interested in the blonde one." Taking advantage of this, Muscular grabbed Venom by the throat and proceeded to roar as he ran in the direction of a wall, using Venom's body as a battering ram to smash through the walls. The walls, counters, and desks did little to stop Muscular's onslaught, and with each drastic attempt at body decorating, the last of his anger dissipated, allowing him to regain enough composure to come up with a strategy. He fired webbing into Muscular's face as they crashed into an abandoned office building, blinding the giant's charge. Then, at foot level, he fired a tendril at the wall in front of Muscular, causing him to stumble and fall, unleashing Venom in the process. Venom paused to allow himself some space before leaping onto the ceiling and glaring down at Muscular as he struggled to free himself from a ruined desk. Using this brief break in action, he examined the villain in front of him. In order to produce more force in his punches, he strengthens himself by developing extra muscle on top of his arms. Venom leapt from the ceiling back to the floor, dodging a desk that was thrown in his direction, but it appeared that the weight of the tissue slowed his punches as well as his movement. It makes sense that at some point he would have to stop packing on tissue, or else he would never hit anything. With a slight growl, Muscular let out a yell. Venom shook with raw anger again, bristling at this. "Boy, you sure do like to stop and think, little man. Stop stalling and fight me. Even those kids fought with more courage than you. You son of a bitch." Venom interrupted himself before he could become enraged once more, shaking his head to sidestep Muscular's bait. Venom charged at Muscular again, waiting for an opening to engage in a death dance with the enormous villain. "No, getting angry takes away the greatest tool we have, our mind. The one weapon you can't hope to beat," Muscular said before acting. With great fury, Muscular swung his arms in an attempt to smash Venom into a heap of mulch. His efforts proved fruitless after a few fleeting strikes. Venom scanned the wrecked office before aiming a tendril at a water bottle and pulling it in Muscular's direction. Batting the container away from his face, Muscular exclaimed, "Seriously, your damn tricks are getting on my nerves, you stupid bug." Only to discover Venom was now inside his guard. Grabbing the large man by the waist, Venom used his superhuman strength to lift and launch the villain out the window. Before slamming into the second story of the building across the street, Muscular flew through the air. Venom leapt after him and landed in the hole created by the impact of his throw, saying, "I'm not a bug, you meathead. I'm an arachnid." Prior to striking Muscular, he became aware of an explosion occurring in the distance. What the hell? Gathered in Momo's room, Mina, Shoto, and Momo were watching the fights play out on live television. Mina was clearly nervous based on her body language. "This is absolutely incredible. We have not one, but two titanic fights happening right now. The symbol of peace is locked in combat with an unnamed villain, who seems to equal him." The anchor took a moment to breathe before going on, and as if that wasn't enough, we have the country's notorious vigilante Venom fighting a member of the League of Villains. With her eyes fixed on the screen, Mina bit a worried lip. This is a man who has murdered 2 professional heroes and at least 3 other people. She detested being this defenseless. She was aware of Izuku's skill at his work, but her anxiety continued to grow as she worried that he might not be able to defeat Muscular. Her focus returned to the TV before she could express her worries. She threw her hand over her mouth in horror, saying, "Oh no. It seems Muscular has grabbed Venom." As she watched Muscular rush and slam Izuku through a building wall, out of sight from the camera. Abruptly, Muscular's form shot out of the building's window and into a wall of an adjacent building. "I hope Venom is okay. He may be unlicensed, but one can at least agree that he's no villain." The image displayed Venom's form rapidly pursuing it. A brief moment of relief crossed Mina's lips as an explosion was audible via the camera feed. A massive cloud of smoke could be seen in the distance as the cameraman panned the view in the direction of the All Might fight. We now move our feed back to the fight between All Might and the unnamed villain. Venom said in a light-hearted manner, attempting to get under Muscular's skin, "You know, your quirk is super unimpressive when you really think about it. All it does is add muscle, which means you can't add too much, or you're too bulky to move. We are literally the worst possible opponent for you. First, we have 2 eyes, which means our weakness isn't depth perception. 2, you're slower than us and less flexible. 3, we are smarter. To sum this up, you were beaten before the fight even began." At this point, Muscular began to scream in frustration and rushing Venom. Venom sidestepped the danger and grabbed Muscular's right arm, using it as leverage to deliver a side kick. He fired 2 tendrils from behind Muscular and affixed them to his shoulder. He then moved to dislocate Muscular's right shoulder using the tendrils in his previous position, making the villain cry out in agony. "And now you're down an arm and I. Face it, Beefcake, you lost. Now you can go quietly, or we can keep kicking the crap out you. Either way, it's our win." Muscle spat, "You think you're so smart, don't you bastard?" And staggered to his feet. He pulled the muscle on his useless arm away, then stretched the muscle on his left. "What do you say we end it with one punch? Winner take all." Venom briefly tapped his chin before spiking a tendril at Muscular's injured arm and pulling. Muscular let out a scream and dropped to his knees once more. His muscles withdrew as Venom closed the distance and kicked him in the head, rendering him unconscious. "Bold of you to assume I'd let you go free." To take Muscular to the police, he then hoisted him onto his shoulder. Venom then looked around, realizing the extent of the damage their battle had caused. A bead of sweat formed on his brow. He looked over his shoulder at the unconscious mass. "Muscular, I hope you understand that you're paying for all of this." With Muscular unconscious on his shoulder, Mina watched as Venom emerged from the building, gave a thumbs up to the cameraman, tossed Muscular's unconscious form into the street, then leapt down himself. He shot several tendrils around the villain, tying him up for the cops. Finally, he lifted Muscular's form and approached the police. Well, folks, there you have it. Venom has triumphed over all. He overcame the antagonist Muscular by himself. Something many pros would find difficult to accomplish. He is now approaching the police, as seen on the screen when Venom was handing over the unconscious villain. As he turned to go, he seemed to hear a call from the police chief, who then held out his hand to Venom, who looked at him for a brief moment before shaking it. "People, I can't believe what I see. Just now, Venom and the chief of the Mustafa police shook hands. Does this imply that Venom is actually a positive force? What effect does this have on his vigilante status, too? Either way, let's get back to All Might's fight. Somewhere else." With his victory over All for One still fresh in his mind, the symbol of peace stood and gestured toward the camera, saying, "Now, it's your turn." As Kurogiri and Tamura sat there, watching the live feed of All for One's arrest, Tamura became agitated as he watched the mastermind villain being led away by the police and placed in a transport. Kurogiri, Tamura said angrily. Bring me a laptop. I have something to look at. Following instructions, Kurogiri gave Tamura the computer. After that, Tamura inserted the drive into the computer, causing a video to appear. All for One clasped his hands in the video and said, "Ah, my dear Tamura. If you are witnessing this, then it means I was defeated by All Might. Fret not, for while my time in the spotlight may be over, yours has just begun. For such an occasion, I ensured the creation of your last piece would continue unabated regardless of my direct involvement. You wished for it to be your final chess piece, so I look forward to seeing your next move. Remember this, Tamura, that even if you fail, you are still my dear pupil. Remember the lessons that I have given you, and you will be a splendid leader." Tamura grinned at what his master had said. The form that was floating inside the glass case marked "Special Project" caught his attention as it began to transform into its magnificent final form. Tamura said menacingly, his eyes burning with rage and madness, "You see this, Kurogiri? It's as teacher said, we've skipped creating a final boss, and went straight for a raid boss." 2 weeks had passed since All Might and All for One's decisive fight, which resulted in All Might's forced retirement and All for One's imprisonment. The symbol of peace only needed to worry about the power vacuum left by the eccentric thieving villain's imprisonment. Toshinori Yagi, who was formerly known as All Might, was preoccupied with teaching since Ua was forcing some student groups to relocate into specially designed dorms in an effort to better safeguard the students. It was move-in day to day, and he observed as a few 1A students unloaded their stuff into the dorm. As he was about to walk away, he noticed some movement on the nearby roof and witnessed a figure land. He went to the rooftop to speak with them after realizing who it was. Venom was standing on the roof of Ua. Even if All Might wasn't present, he had made himself as noticeable as possible for everyone in the teacher's lounge, so sooner or later, someone would notice him and approach him to demand an explanation. "Partner, are we doing the right thing?" Izuku contemplated his symbiote. "I consider that to be a significant risk." Izuku told his companion, "I have to do this so I can move on with my life, Venom. I understand that while you aren't exactly harboring resentment, you are undoubtedly unhappy with what transpired." Izuku sighed, but before he could respond, Toshinori Yagi's skeletal form appeared from the doorway as the roof door opened. The former symbol of peace said dryly, "You know, when you said you'd be by the visit, I thought you meant you'd jump me on my way home or something." Venom said, as though he hadn't heard All Might, "You know, you're the reason why we act. In fact, it was because of your words to us that we had to prove you wrong." Confused, Toshinori asked, "What do you mean by my words?" "That night I lost my powers was the first time we'd ever met," Venom sighed. "We forget that this is not how you met us. Allow us to jog your memory." Toshinori's eyes widened in shock as Venom turned to face the symbol of peace, revealing that his mask had vanished and that only his hood remained in place. Are you venomous? However, how? You had no peculiarities." Izuku chuckled at this. "We expected you to say that. However, we discovered our own quirk, our own way, to be heroes. Kid, following the accident, I searched for you. To be honest, I came to your apartment multiple times to apologize. I wanted you to be my heir." Izuku's expression changed from shock to rage at this point. "So you believe we would have seized the opportunity to apologize if you had intended to do so? Maybe in a different incarnation, but you harm us, All Might. We were in the lowest point in our history. We held you in high regard. You said that we couldn't be heroes. Despite this, we might not be here today if we hadn't discovered our quirk that day." Unaware of how profoundly his words had affected the young man, All Might's eyes grew wide. "We were teased our entire lives for having no eccentricities. It was said to us that we would never make heroes. Despite the fact that was all we had ever desired. Our closest companion became our greatest source of suffering. In an attempt to grant us a quirk in our afterlife, he even instructed us to jump off a building." Toshinori's feelings grew worse the more he heard. "You can't possibly imagine how it feels to be quirkless, and pitied your whole life." Locking eyes with Izuku, Toshinori said, "I'd know better than you think, kid." The fluffy-haired boy was taken aback by his statement and decided to explain, saying, "I was quirkless too, once upon a time. I was truly born with my quirk. I don't want to give too much away, but you of all people don't have unique quirks. Just as her teacher had done for her, my teacher gave one to me. Despite my quirkiness, she was impressed by my desire to bring peace to the world. So, yeah, kid, I would know something about being quirkless, Izuku said, but their actions had the opposite effect of relieving the boy's anger. Therefore, All Might, what you said is even more despicable. You were contradicting yourself. Why couldn't we become the symbol of peace if a quirkless boy could? You and we were exactly the same. You claimed we couldn't, though. You mentioned your instructor. If she had heard what you said to me, what would she have said to you? Had she shared with me what you revealed? Recognizing that Venom had a point, Toshinori's gaze dropped to the ground. I wanted to make it right though. From sympathy, not conviction. That is not a sign of trust in us. Izuku hesitated for a moment, as if pondering what to say, then said, if anything, it's an insult. We do not hate you, All Might. However, we acknowledge that you, like every human, have flaws. Without you and without your quirk, we made our own way. Kid, I'm sorry, at least not just now, we're not sure if we can forgive you. That being said, neither you nor we are your enemies. We've never done so. We have made an effort to emulate you in everything we have done, to demonstrate to you our own capacity for bravery. All Might, we have faith that you will protect our secret. As we did with yours. You have my word, child. And just so you know, I was never wrong in my life like I was right then and there. Toshinori paused before saying, young man, you too can be a hero, because you already are. Even so, Venom found it hard to control his emotions as he nodded and said, we appreciate the sentiment, but it came 13 months too late. Toshinori sighed, but he didn't have the luxury of regrets now that Venom had shot off the rooftop and was swinging away into the city. His successor Mirio needed his guidance to help him master One for All. After landing in an alleyway, Izuku leaned against a wall, trying to stop the tears that just wouldn't stop. I know you haven't forgiven him yet, but know this, despite your feelings, you've grown into a fantastic hero. Peter would be proud of you, kid, and I'm so happy that we are now partners. Izuku's tears came in torrents, hitting his emotions like a ton of bricks. He cried because, in spite of everything he'd said, all he'd ever wanted was recognition from All Might, but when that recognition came, it only made him feel empty. Come on, kid, you still have to help Mina move in, and she threatened to make you do it shirtless if you were late. Izuku wiped away his tears, finding great solace in the memory of Mina at this precise moment. Venom, you're right, let's go. Izuku was standing in her room, moving some of her boxes without a shirt on. He was getting uncomfortable looks, but then Mina grabbed him and wrapped herself around, pressing herself against him for being so sweet to help her. His symbiote coughed something that sounded like marking her territory, but Izuku wasn't sure because he was too busy trying not to drop Mina's box of precious S, her box set of the Ridley Scott Aliens movies, and he wasn't sure that she loved him more than her favorite movie. He walked into her dorm, set the box down, then wiped some sweat from his brow. He looked around her room for a moment before blushing a little because this was the first time he'd been in a girl's room. Mina, is it possible for us to switch on your AC? Izuku called out to Mina, who was talking to one of her friends, a girl who appeared to be invisible, in the hallway. It's really hot in here. He heard heated whispers, then two simultaneous squeals, and then Mina's teasing voice rang out from the hallway. Oh, it's definitely hot in there, Tiger, but I'm pretty sure it's because you're shirtless. Venom, I think I'm scared, Izuku worriedly said to his companion. You just have to roll with the punches, kid. You'll gladly fight an army of Nomu, but you're afraid of your girlfriend. I wouldn't say that's happily. Before the internal debate could continue, Mina entered the room with a sly smile on her face, and Izuku could only think to himself how bad that must be for him before she slammed into him and sent them both to the ground. His spine tingled as she purred in a rather cat-like way. Her yellow eyes danced with amusement, and he couldn't help but feel excited because her face was so close to his, giving him anxiety. Mina, you're really close to me right now, Izuku stumbled, unaccustomed to Mina taking advantage of him in such a way. Yes, I am aware of that. I thought I'd give you a little evil treatment in return for your assistance. Izuku could only hope that no one happened to walk in on their private moment as Mina smashed her lips against his. After spending several hours unpacking, the UA-1A students had completed their setup. Together with a few visiting students from their sister class, Izuku had spoken with several of Mina's classmates. Izuku had to be honest. It was difficult to distinguish between Tetsu and Eijiro Kirishima. He had witnessed them fighting about who was more manly, Venom or the Crimson Riot. Speaking for the Venom side, Tetsu said that it was incredibly manly for someone to stand up for what's right without expecting a big reward. Hiroshima maintained that Crimson Riot was the epitome of manliness and that Tetsu had not been invited to the argument. Izuku only watched for a short while before removing himself from the circumstance and carrying on with his quest to find Shoto and his girlfriend. Someone is a fan of yours. Please don't do this at this time. While searching for Mina and Shoto, he came across a strangely shaped mummified boy wearing a full body cast. He was face down outside the lavatory for girls. Izuku arched a brow, then looked away from the strange creature. Just as he turned to leave, he noticed a yellow sleeping bag a few feet away in the center of the hallway. His curiosity piqued, and he moved to give it a closer look. The bundle spoke to him just as he was about to poke it. "Hello Venom, or should I say Izuku Midoriya," the bundle said in a muffled voice. Then, it wiggled a little and revealed Erasehead's face protruding from the sleeping bag, staring up at him with an imposing yet bored expression. Izuku hurriedly turned to face Aizawa after searching the area for anyone who might have heard, but he didn't see anyone flinching. Aizawa brow raises, "Don't do that. Don't go spouting off my identity." Izuku knew it couldn't have been from the cameras because he'd taken great care to make sure his hood covered his face. "Aren't you going to ask how I knew?" he asked. He turned to face Aizawa again. "I assume everyone's favorite bald eagle told you, since he specifically promised not to." Izuku sighed. Seeing this, Aizawa made an effort to win him over. Now, before you get upset, All Might had good reason for disclosing that information to me." At this, Aizawa nodded, confirming Izuku's suspicion. "Whatever. It's just another way he's let me down. He didn't even last a day." Izuku couldn't help but think how absurd this scenario would be in a less dire situation. "I won't waste time here. I know about your investigation into our issues with leaking pipes around here. I won't interfere. All Might, myself, and the headmaster are aware of your actions as a vigilante. Other than your alleged assault on Bakugo, you haven't done anything besides operate without a license. Given the times we find ourselves in, we have decided to look the other way, at least until the League of Villains is taken care of." Izuku's expression became more serious. This was no longer a friendly conversation with someone who was privy to his secret. "Oh, I don't think I need your permission, Eraserhead. After all, I may be heroic but I'm still a vigilante." Izuku grinned with a wry grin. "However, I won't deny that being able to move around in my search will be easier with your permission." Aizawa said nonchalantly, as if talking about the weather, "You do realize that, because both All Might and myself know your identity, we could turn you in." "You could. Very easily. However, you won't do that. Because we have the potential for a symbiotic relationship." "Oh, that's lovely. I won't deny that you have your uses. You're a maverick, and I don't agree with your style of operating. That being said, you get results, and we need a fresh angle on this problem. So I'd like to formally request your help with the matter." Aizawa spoke once more, before his voice became grave. Izuku laughed at Aizawa's attempts at intimidation, saying, "I know what you're planning. I won't let you turn my students into vigilantes though. After all, it's difficult to be afraid of someone who's cocooned in a sleeping bag. Look, Eraserhead, I respect you. In fact, you're one of the main influences in how I do things in an operation. But you don't scare me, and I haven't forced anyone to do anything they haven't wanted to. My friends agree with me based on my ideals and merit. I didn't make them disillusioned with the hero system as it stands. You guys did that to yourselves." Aizawa gave nothing away. Aizawa stared back up at him from his cozy position as a caterpillar cosplayer, then nodded and rolled away down the hall. "I don't think we'll ever be more than two groups who share enemies. However, you have my word that the spy situation will be settled in a few days at most. I have a sense for these things." Izuku just carried on searching, not sure how to react to the sight of a top hero rolling down a hallway in a sleeping bag. They were arguing with a few of their classmates when he finally located them. Mina and the glasses-wearing boy were having a furious fight. Shoto took a back seat and observed intently in case he had to intervene. He appeared uninterested in the situation as a whole. The young person wearing glasses had a burn scar running down the left side of his face, which added to the intimidating appearance of his angry expression. The glasses-wearing boy cried out, his already irritated features intensified by his frown. "Ashido, I cannot believe you would stand up for that villainous Venom." Mina responded with equal rage, "And I can't believe that you would just insult the guy who saved my life." Not in front of Izuku, No one insulted her. Even in the event that they were unaware that they had. I would have been dead, Tenya. That creature would have snapped my neck. Tenya managed a brief moment of shame before shaking his head and continuing. Mina looked shocked at this, saying, his actions make our class and the pros look bad. He took out a villain that we could not. Is that why you're bashing the guy? Because he made you look bad. Tenya, this isn't a game or a popularity contest. This is about saving people's lives. And newsflash, the only reason our class got hurt as bad as it did. It was because we weren't allowed to fight back. It's a miracle no one died. That was the end of it. Shoto followed herself. She was so furious that she ran into Izuku without even looking. She struggled until she realized it was him as he encircled her with his arms. With her face buried in his chest, Mina said, softly, I'm sorry, Freckles. That wasn't like me. It touched Izuku that she was so protective. He buried his hand in her fluffy pink hair and tightened his grip on her. Before he cleared his throat, Izuku said, thank you, Mina. I'm lucky to have such a proud and protective girlfriend in my life. I think we should have a meeting. I already texted Hitoshi about 20 minutes ago, so he's probably almost here. I'd like to discuss that special project I gave Shoto with the team. They both nodded at this, and Shoto went to let Hitoshi in through the front door while he and Mina went to her room. Izuku sensed something wasn't quite right when they sat down, like a slight twinge in his spider sense. Since it posed no immediate threat, he chose to ignore it for the time being. As they sat on her bed, Mina leaned into him and took his hand in hers, entwining their fingers. After waiting for a short while, Shoto and Hitoshi entered the room, their faces displaying their typical looks of boredom. After closing the door, they sat down on the ground in front of the other two team members. Izuku gave his friends a nod of greeting before rubbing the side of his face. Unable to put his senses away, he flicked his eyes around the room. He paused, almost for dramatic effect. Okay, Shoto. Let's talk about why we are here before you give us your findings. After saying his piece, Izuku nodded to Shoto, who pulled up a list on his phone. Ua clearly has a leak. I was able to figure that out after a few minutes of talking about the events you guys went through. So that leads to the question of whom. Alright, so based on the criteria that Izuku gave me, I have compiled a list of prospective spies. To recap, the criteria was involvement in both league incidents involving 1A, while remaining unscathed. He took a breather. So based on that, I have a list of suspects. The first, Yuga Aoyama. He came out relatively unscathed in both incidents, and he acts odd at times. Just as Shoto was about to say anything more, Shinso interrupted him. Izuku, Shoto, and Mina were shocked and asked, what about Mina? Think about it. She wasn't there for the USJ attack, which could hint at prior knowledge. Izuku gave a headshake. Hitoshi nodded and then gave Mina an apologetic smile. Doesn't work. Mina was with me the night before, and she was coughing a lot. She missed school because she was sick. I actually with her the day of as well, and she was definitely not faking it. Mina waved off his worry, obviously unfazed by his action. Sorry, Mina, I didn't actually suspect you. I just wanted to ensure we were thorough and wanted to confirm Izuku wouldn't let his feelings affect our investigation. Izuku nodded to Shoto and motioned to continue, saying, don't worry about it, dude. I may not be as smart as you guys, but I know it never hurts to consider all the angles. Shoto cleared his throat and went back to his presentation. Okay, the next, I was actually going to subsect Mezzo Shoji based off quirk usage for remote spying, and lack of involvement in the first attack. However, he was seriously injured in the camp incident, so I think that we can eliminate him. Izuku silently murmured to himself while continuing to stealthily scan the room. When the subject of spies was brought up, his sense had somewhat increased, but it was still passive. For the time being, he continued by saying, I don't know these people, but unless he was really committed to selling his cover, I don't think it's Shoji. Before they turned to face Shoto again, the others concurred with his assessment. He glanced at Mina a few times and started to appear uncomfortable. Everyone's attention was captured when the speaker said, I only have one more candidate. It simultaneously makes the most and least sense. It was almost as obvious that there was tension in the room as there was excitement over the name. Izuku closed his eyes, listening with his ears amplified. Izuku counted 5 sharp inhales at that statement, and his spider sense spiked for a second, confirming his suspicions that Toru Hagakure was the most likely candidate. Izuku then started to grin before putting his imaginary glasses back on. He got to his feet, seemingly to stretch, and then he blasted his arm quickly at the door, webbing it completely and keeping anyone from leaving. Izuku said calmly, at least until Mina struck him in the shoulder. It seems in our search for the mole, our mole found us out. Mina was not pleased with his choice and exclaimed, why the hell did you get your goop on my new door? Hold on, babe, I'll explain, and so will Toru. Isn't that right? Izuku said, glancing toward a vacant corner of the room just as an incomprehensible eep, and some awkward shuffling ensued. Toru, Mina asked, obviously shocked to learn that her best friend was a spy. She put her arms around herself and dropped to her knees, saying, it's a mistake, right? Izuku just made a mistake for once. Izuku knew that now was not the right moment to console Mina, as much as he wanted to. Izuku said, his voice warping at the end, just so you know, I can hear your breathing and your footsteps. In case you're thinking about escaping, you won't get far, so here is how it's going to go down. I can either web you up, and do my whole interrogation thing, or you can willing cooperate, and then we go from there. Your call. The invisible girl let out a sigh. She said in a scared, quiet voice, fine, okay, I'll talk. Just, please, don't hurt me. Izuku knew it might all be an act, but he still wanted to feel bad for her. She was spying on them even if she wasn't the one doing the spying. How did you figure it out? Shoto actually replied, there were inconsistencies in your whereabouts during the attacks. For instance, you said you were near Bakugo during the USJ incident, but I only remember you being there for a few minutes, before you had disappeared. I didn't think much of it at the time, but when I watched your exam with Ojiro, that struck me as odd. You knew how he fought, even though he was in a completely different area of the USJ staging area. You also sustained no injuries in either incident. I became convinced, when I asked around about your specific whereabouts during the camp incident. Some of our classmates said you were with them, but there were large periods of time when you were missing, throughout the whole trip actually. Izuku, evidently impressed by Shoto's deduction, nodded in response to his analytical work. He had anticipated the invisible girl to refute him or even to show him animosity, but she had not done so either. He assumed she was just sitting there sullenly. Izuku made the decision to get right to the point. Izuku was trying to stay calm, but the possibility that this girl was a willing agent of evil stung him. Okay, since you haven't denied anything, is it safe to assume we're correct? If so, then tell us, Toru. Why did you become a traitor? Why did you deliberately feed the League of Villains information? You'd better tell the truth, Toru. You got several of your classmates, including your best friend, seriously injured. And you got a little boy killed. So start talking, now. Now crying. She cried out, I'm sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. With the exception of Mina, who was looking at her friend numbly and had a blank expression on her face, the group exchanged a glance. Wet patches emerged on the floor beneath Toru as she sobbed, I just wanted to be seen. To be normal. Do you have any idea what it's like to go through life without ever being seen? To not know whether you look good enough to impress the boy you like. To not be able to smile with your friends when you have a good time. To not even remember what you look like. Because all you see is a blank space where you're supposed to be. She sighed, expressing her years of self-loathe. It's so easy to be ignored when no one can see you. Her voice turned sour at this point. So yeah, when I was told I could have my quirk removed, so I could be visible again. I jumped at the chance. Who wouldn't? She said. She hesitated once more, searching for the right phrase. I didn't know what my actions would cause though. All they said was they wanted me to give some information here and there. They never said anything about hurting people. Otherwise, I'd have never agreed. But I was so desperate to be rid of my quirk, so I could finally be Toru Hagakure the teenage girl, instead of Toru Hokage the invisible girl. I never thought you guys would care about me like you did. Would treat me like I'm normal. But by the time I wanted out, they refused to let me go. They threatened my family. What was I supposed to do? Izuku felt conflicted. Toru was just one of the League of Villains, many victims. She had been taken advantage of, and through her actions, she had caused pain to the people she had grown to love so much. Her actions had killed a child and left several of them indirectly scarred. That guilt would follow her for the rest of her life. He sought advice from his friends. Mina quickly moved to embrace Toru, and the two of them started crying together. With a deep introspective gaze, Hitoshi scrutinized her words for any hint of dishonesty. Shoto appeared uneasy, obviously unsure of how to handle a girl in tears. He could only stare at what a mess this had become as he scratched the back of his head. They had ultimately made the decision not to turn Toru in. The girl was a victim in the same way that the other students in her class were. As a result, they agreed to let Toru leave as long as she promised to at least be transparent about the information she provided if she continued to spy. Izuku had encouraged her to stay friends with the invisible girl, even though he wasn't sure if Mina would ever trust him completely again. They had left to have a conversation somewhere in an attempt to patch things up between them. Izuku gave a headshake. He had to concentrate on the current task. To which Shoto nodded. Izuku said bluntly, "Shoto, we need to discuss a code name for you. You can't immediately out yourself as a vigilante. We need that revelation for later." Shoto, not particularly pleased that he had to finally come up with a name for himself, said dryly, "I really don't even want a name, but clearly it's necessary." In a casual manner, Hitoshi proposed, "How about dry ice?" To some extent, it did fit, but Izuku shook his head. Izuku tapped his chin, thinking, it only really incorporates half his quirk. Admittedly, he only uses half of it most of the time, but still. We need a name that will eventually incorporate his fire quirk. Suddenly, he realized how hot the room was. "Hey guys, is it just me, or is this place really hot?" Hitoshi asked as he checked his phone's temperature. Izuku's train of thought was interrupted by, it says it's about 30 degrees Celsius outside right now." Izuku asked Hitoshi, "What did you just say?" Which perplexed the young man. As if an angelic chorus had suddenly started singing in his brain, he answered, "What do you mean?" "I said it was 30 degrees Celsius. I know what to call you, Shoto." The adolescent raised an eyebrow at that remark. "Your code name is Celsius, the vigilante who control both boiling heat and absolute zero." The move in Spy Confrontation had occurred a few days prior. Izuku was relieved that Mina was not as depressed as she had been. Though he made sure his girlfriend knew he was there for her, he was a little irritated that his skill set wasn't able to help her resolve her problems with her friend. For that, she had given him a hug and told him how much she loved him. The outsiders now found themselves waiting for May and LeBlanc. Shoto was seated close to Momo, and from the closeness of their arms, Izuku could assume they were holding hands beneath the table. Mina was sitting next to him, her head leaning on his shoulder as she was currently encircled by his right arm. It was cute that she was snoring a little. Just as he turned to ask Shoto to snap a photo of them, the door of the cafe chimed, letting Hitoshi and May, who were approaching him rather closely, inside. As usual, Hitoshi brought 2 chairs to the table and, in a gentlemanly gesture that completely missed May's mark, took out hers. "So," smiled May as she started, "I've had your costumes for a while, but I hear you guys have been busy." Coughing a little, Momo said, "Yes, I am curious to see what my funds helped you create, May. I want my friends to be safe during their activities." Her concern for her friends was clear, demonstrating that even though she was extremely wealthy, she was a good-hearted person who would stop at nothing to help the people she loved. May gave her a questioning glance before realizing how she was able to afford luxury materials. The others added their gratitude as well, making the living printer blush at the attention. "Oh yeah, thanks again, Momo. It was no trouble, I merely wished to help in my own way." Shoto's jaw dropped, not knowing whether to thank the girl or strangle her. "Anyways, so yeah, for Todoroki, I have this thing that will rearrange your face so no one will recognize you or that nasty scar." Shoto tried to be courteous as he grated his teeth and said, I was hoping for something like a helmet that monitors my body temperature." She handed him a blue helmet with a gold full-face visor and said, "Oh. Yeah, sure, I made helmet for you in case you decided to be lame with my babies." As soon as he put it on, it provided him with tactical information, sliding angles that would maximize his speed, and an approximate sense of his body temperature. Shoto was happy overall. "Thank you, May. No issue. This is the body suit you requested. It's fireproof and will help you maintain body heat when using your ice quirk." She gave him a black body suit with yellow accent markings. These marks will change to red if your internal temperature is reaching danger levels. The helmet links up to the suit, and by using the voice command, reset, it'll use an internal cooling and heating system to force your body back to its normal temp. Then her gaze went to Mina. She handed Mina a skin-tight body suit with circles around the torso area, saying, "So for Mina, I have the bodysuit as requested, which has built-in magnetics which essentially nullify ballistic damage. I didn't test it for sustained punishment though, so be careful with testing it. May handed the pink girl a science fiction-looking helmet that resembled a ballistic face mask with two big glowing yellow eyes and two antennae on top. Then I have your helmet, which has a built-in telemetry monitors to give out information on your body, and has a built-in communications array with the team. May said. The gauntlet had padded knuckles and an exterior that resembled a storage tube. Finally, I made you a gauntlet and an acid gun. Both items which can store up acid ahead of time to reduce your quirk's strain. The acid gun had 100 cartridges that you could fill with your acid at your leisure. All it appeared to be was a sophisticated water cannon. She hesitated for a moment, then looked at Hitoshi. His eyebrows shot up in surprise at the versatility of his new gear. For you, Toshi, I made some rather unique babies. I made you some shock gauntlets, which shock outlets on the knuckles, and the index fingers fire darts of various uses. He smiled at her, causing the resident gearhead to blush a little. I made you a chestplate similar to Mina's. It uses magnetic polarity to halt bullets and other projectiles. I also built you some combat boots that have hover jets, allowing you to keep up with the team at full speed. Just as he opened his mouth to express his gratitude, she spoke again, "AA, and I built you a box lunch." It confused everyone at the table. Did she mean that she had packed him a lunchbox? She dug around in her bag and placed a medium-sized box on the table. After pressing a button on the side, she started preparing sandwiches and tiny pastries while laughing hysterically as four metal arms protruded from the sides. May said, irritated, "I'm kind of upset." The girl looked at the others at the table, her mouth hanging open. I was trying to build a machine that made bread spontaneously. But all I could do was build one that made sandwiches. She invented a device that could make food out of nothing. She had unintentionally and accidentally solved a major global problem. Still, Hitoshi was stunned by her thought and blushing undoubtedly. The girl blushed and gave a shy scratch to her cheek, saying, Thanks May. Anytime, Toshi." To get everyone's attention, Izuku gave a cough. He considered what he had to say now as they all turned to face him. "Okay guys, listen. You guys saw how much you need training during the camp incident. Well, I figure since you have the provisional license exams coming up, then that means you need to train." At this point he stopped to assess their responses. He smiled at the determined expressions in their eyes. This group was his squad. By the time our week of training is up, you guys will be fully fledged heroes. We will accomplish this via some mild memory sharing via my suit, and a grueling training regimen for the week itself. May, Momo, you are both welcome to come along. If nothing else, you can observe your contributions in action. Izuku looked at his watch and then noticed the time. He turned to face the group again and spoke to them. "Our training starts in 2 days, on Monday morning. I expect you to meet me outside the dorms at 7 a.m., with your gear packed and ready to transport." Everyone gave him a nod. Yes, they are oblivious to what awaits them. No, they don't, Izuku thought exuberantly. He intended to be strict and meticulous because he didn't want his friends to perish under his careless guidance. In the event that they pass away during the procedure, well, Venom.
I will continue this story in next part. Till then, bye bye.